precipice of an ancient burial ground.
Wow, ain't that something? Well, let's drill straight through this son of a gun.
Hey.
Hey, where'd my slop go?
It's me.
Who are you?
Riddick. What'd you call me?
I'm sorry, Riddick, was it? Wait a minute. I'm remembering something. But it's so hard for my little gamer brain.
Would you like a hint?
Don't patronize me. I know things. I'm not Homer Simpson. Monster.
And him?
Oh, that's just a stuffed dog filled with various pseudoscientific instruments for the purpose of ghost hunting, as well as an erratic control system that at one point exploded, so I replaced him. J.C. Denton from the Deus Ex franchise, and since then, he appears to have assimilated both into a vaguely human and mostly benign companion archetype.
Don't care.
Hey, wait a minute. You're Riddick. I was just playing your Chronicles.
What?
The game you're inside of. You know you're in a game right now.
No.
Oh. Awkward. Well, you're inside of an old video game right now, and so I thought I'd tell you what the hell.
This is a trip.
For you, what about me? Here I was playing a video game and sipping a Monster, and now I'm having a back and forth with my avatar.
What's Monster?
It's an energy drink. Tell me about yourself. I hear you've got another film coming out.
Are you...
Tell me more about Monster.
Tell you more? I don't know. It's zero sugar, comes in various flavors that are vaguely similar. Sometimes it has Call of Duty or Apex on the can, which fills me with embarrassment at the checkout counter.
Wrap it up.
Oh, sorry. Well, that's all I can say about that until they pay me.
I'll take it back.
Well, I don't sell them.
What are you selling?
Nothing.
How come?
I'm not a salesperson. I'm
But a humble gamer.
Vent tool.
What?
Give me the vent tool.
I don't have one. As I've said, I'm not selling anything.
What are you trading?
I'm not trading anything either.
Trade 5 UDs for 20 smokes.
UDs?
Yeah. I'll take it back.
I feel like you're not listening to me.
I'm not a very good listener. Hand them over.
I'm not trading.
Give me the smokes.
Fine. Okay, but what are you giving me in return?
Trank ammo.
Alright, okay, fair enough. Well, how do I get them to you?
Not my problem.
Well, it might be. Here, I'll toss them to you.
Full commitment.
Yep.
Cool.
Enjoy those because I can't afford any more.
You make those smokes out of moths?
I'm sorry, what?
Moths.
You're a weird guy.
I squash bugs.
That's cool, man.
Let's go.
The Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay is a first-person stealth action game, movie tie-in prequel, and now I know what a TV dinner feels like simulator. It was developed by Starbreeze Studios in conjunction with Tygon Studios, and was published by Vivendi Universal Games for the original Xbox in mid-2004. But by December, a PC port featuring new content was released with a comically long title, The Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay Developers Cut. 5 years later, a third iteration of the game would be released in a manner so unconventional, it must have been entirely to make you look like a lunatic when trying to explain it to non-gamers. 2009's The Chronicles of Riddick: Assault on Dark Athena is presented as a standalone sequel to Escape from Butcher Bay, but it's more like a second chapter of the same story, using the same engine. That includes the entirety of Escape from Butcher Bay, which has been remade from the ground up. A remake with with DLC presented as the main attraction. This version would end up on PC, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3. The developer's cut and the remake are kindred beings, representing two eras of graphic excess. Both are throwing themselves headfirst into the era's respective pool of visuals, and thus it's hard for me to choose which I prefer. It's this one. It always was. I was lying. I think I'm primarily gonna show the developer's cut, because that's the way the game looks in my head. But I'll jump back to the remake every now and then, and it's pretty easy to spot when that happens. But as a guide, here's the developer's cut, remake, developer's cut, remake, developer's cut, Xbox version, remake, Ernest Goes to Jail.
I'm the guy that's going to shoot you.
Escape from Butcher Bay began development sometime in early 2002, sending the newly formed and already burned out Swedish studio Starbreeze into a desperate crunch as they were still finishing their first game, an action RPG titled Enclave. In an interview with Kotaku UK, the lead designer of both games, Jens Andersson, described Enclave's development as doing everything wrong. So there was a lot of pressure to nail their next project. In the US, Vivendi Universal's sub-label Black Label Games would assist in porting Enclave to PC, and were so impressed by the game's distinct visual flair that talks of a deeper partnership began to blossom. Thinking they should stick with their strengths, then Starbreeze CEO Nick Dunham proposed a Lord of the Rings tie-in game in the style of Enclave, but they were countered with a tie-in to the Y2K sci-fi horror film Pitch Black, which serves as the introduction to Richard B. Riddick, the subject of its eventual sequel. Vin Diesel so loved playing this character, this charming survivalist sociopath, that he was eager to let him back in, to appease his dark passenger and hand him control of the wheel.
Once I was done shooting Triple X, I'd look into the mirror and I would see Riddick looking back at me.
Obviously, considering all that Universal would have at their disposal, that seems like a profoundly random compromise. But according to Anderson, they were confident in the budding star power of Vin Diesel and in Pitch Black's rather immediate cult status. What followed was a sort of auditioning process. Over the course of 3 months, Starbreeze would produce a Pitch Black prototype that showed off each of the potential game's features and borrowed bits and pieces from games like Half-Life and Thief: The Dark Project. Scraps of this can be unlocked on the developer's cut through collectibles, and while it's clearly unpolished and full of placeholders, it's obvious that Starbreeze had a good sense of what they wanted the game to feel like, and were ready to start swinging as though their life depended on it.
Can you get me some dope?
Sure, man. You can suck both my tits for a pack of smokes.
Starbreeze was relieved to learn that they would not be making some kind of one-to-one adaptation of Pitch Black, rather a prequel story that would complement it, but they were still examining it closely and taking its style and language into account. The film is a survival story on an alien planet, and thus you're only given hints at what was going on in the rest of the galaxy. This granted them a fair amount of freedom in creating a look and feel. For a while.
Some game developers find that restrictive, but other developers think this is...
In 2002, the Chronicles of Riddick film hadn't even been greenlit, so the game entered production only using Pitch Black as reference. But as the sequel film quickly caught up to the game, more and more of it had to be considered in place of Starbreeze's ideas. 2 writers and sort of liaisons from Universal were assigned to the project in correspondence with a company that Vin Diesel himself founded called Tygon Studios, a sort of IP curator, existing to keep the various permutations of any intellectual property, I guess featuring Vin Diesel, consistent with each other. From the sound of things, the Universal boys would relay notes from Tygon to Starbreeze whenever they had implemented something that the character would not have said or done. The example they use in that Kotaku interview was a side quest about retrieving an insane inmate's rubber duck from a dangerous environment, which got the note that Riddick wouldn't do that. He would, however, bunny hop around trying to collect psychedelic moths to trade for concept art of himself. Things like this were really interesting to read because you can feel that resistance in the game, I think, as though Starbreeze was following an assembly guide that kept changing up on them. Pages out of order, languages jumbled. Interviews tended to jokingly downplay any tension or animosity from this interplay between companies, but just knowing how jobs work, I'm sure this was really annoying. The PC version includes an extensive developer commentary, and its full full of the polite, soft-spoken Swedes very diplomatically describing all the ways they got fucked by VUG, how long they went not definitively knowing whether the game was meant to be a prequel to Pitch Black or a prequel to the Chronicles of Riddick, which disrupted all vectors of development, and once they had nailed down that it would be a prequel with a wraparound relevant to the upcoming film, containing a character removed from that film's theatrical cut, they would still get notes containing very granular corrections, like characters shouldn't shout exclamations like Jesus Christ, because Jesus is not canon in the Riddick verse, so under no circumstances would anyone say that, and certainly not 5 minutes into the movie.
Jesus.
I'm sure there was an air of unease all throughout the Starbreeze offices. Escape from Butcher Bay was made confusingly fast, utilizing technology that was cutting edge, and while they were still split working on different projects, one of which to be based on the Tremors franchise, with gameplay reminiscent of Resident Evil and Splinter Cell. They had contracts drawn to acquire a whole studio named Rock Solid and publish through VUG. They even had a prototype created, but unforeseen circumstances required that to be scrapped. Universal also yanked the license from Rock Solid, leaving them standing on Earth very dissimilar from their namesake. That studio would go bankrupt because of this mess, but ultimately reform as Avalanche Studios. So you can thank a doomed Tremors game for the Just Cause franchise. The planned sequel to Enclave met much the same fate. It doesn't often get talked about, but Starbreeze released a second game in 2004 titled Knights of the Temple Infernal Crusade, published by TDK Media Active Europe. This partnership was an important paycheck. Unfortunately, 2/3 through Riddick's development, TDK Media Active would be assimilated by gaming's great Borg Cube, Take-Two, and become repurposed as one of its many outposts. Without TDK, the sequel to Knights of the Temple was handed off to another studio. But more pressingly, Starbreeze was rapidly going broke, so staff were either being laid off or pulled in to work on Riddick. The fun of working on the game was gone, as the team realized they were pretty much all that was left. This crew of 100 pared down to 25 was meant to meet a hard deadline 6 months out. At that time, the game still looked like the prototype footage. So much had to come together in those few months of crunch. Listening to the game's developer commentary, nearly every story begins with,
So this really came together late into production, or this was something we added last minute right before we went gold.
with some measure of confidence that they had a potentially good game in the making. They approached Vivendi for more money. In response, Vivendi went a completely different route the team never considered, and canceled the game. Oh, you want money? The street corner's right over there, gamer. For a brief period, the Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay hung, suspended in the air, ready to plummet as soon as it looked down. The producers didn't even tell the dev team their game had been canceled, and worked out a solution to get Vivendi to honor their contract, which required scrapping the PS2 version. A completely misguided corporate decision that hamstrung Riddick's success to this day, probably. To prioritize a less popular console and not create what might have been the most impressive looking PS2 game ever resulted predictably in very unimpressive sales. Starbreeze had to quickly cut another licensing deal and begin work on The Darkness instead of reaping the greatly delayed rewards of Butcher Bay. In some sense, the game did save Starbreeze from closure and gave them a second chance, but only by acting as a sort of sacrificial lamb, appeasing a council of publishing deities, providing new avenues of begging for money to barely scrape by. The gaming business. Despite not selling very well, the Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay was met with unanimous praise. GamePro mirroring the sentiment, "Hello? Is this thing on? Why is nobody talking about this game?" Naming it Editor's Choice and giving it 5s across the board, beaming with excitement as they wrote, "Chronicles is a memorably great game, and you gotta love being surprised by a masterpiece without having to endure months of hype beforehand. You'd have to really strain yourself attempting to find any coverage of the game that was fiercely critical, but IGN's write-up does exemplify a particularly bothersome phenomenon of the era, in which games with a solid solid single-player experience. Don't tack on a pointless, half-baked multiplayer component that eats up time and budget to the cries of, well, what the heck, this game sucks now. In between complimenting the impressive graphics and varied gameplay, they conclude with, I so badly want to play this online, it hurts. In a genre that's inherently defined with multiplayer online missions, and on a console that's now defined by its superior online capabilities, Riddick's lack of multiplayer options is a huge bummer, as one editor at IGN has been heard saying, "What the devil?" Yes, IGN editor Stewie Griffin said that. So yeah, Butcher Bay had been well received by critics, but it kind of looked like critics were like the only people that played it. It probably didn't help that the PC version had pretty intense system requirements, and there was only a year between it and the release of the Xbox 360. Not the end of the world, seeing as though many original Xbox titles were backwards compatible with the 360, right? Unfortunately, stupidly, VUG had failed to get the game on the short list of titles that were backwards compatible. So after all that bullshit getting the thing on shelves, the potential sales were first cut in half, and then that half was cut in half. In an interview with IGN, the then lead designer at Starbreeze, Ian Stevens, claims that Microsoft gave them some pretty fair reasons why they couldn't do it. And without being there or knowing any inside information on that process, I bet they didn't. One clumsy misstep among a million that sent Riddick's first game power sliding down a steep staircase. The only question left is, did it look cool as it fell? To me, the most commendable quality of the Riddick-verse is how much it unquestionably exists. Like, it's there. It's happening whether you know about it or not. And it has continued to strangely and consistently spread, such that the only explanation is that its curators genuinely love it and want it to continue in whatever form they can get. But before we get into that, I'll answer the question that I wrote you asking me, what's my history with the man behind the goggles? Unbeknownst to me, I'd been following Vin Diesel's career my entire life. In fact, I have a vivid memory of one of those glorious instances when a grade school teacher wheels in a TV and proclaims, "Class, I do not want to work today," and they popped in a VHS copy of Penny Marshall's 1990 film Awakenings, a fictional story based on the memoir of a real neurologist who discovered the benefits of using an existing medication on patients suffering from encephalitis lethargica. Why that movie? I'm sure she came up with some loose association with something we may have read about or mentioned in passing, but this was actually the first film credit for one Vinithy Diesel, and he brilliantly essays the role of hospital orderly. Don't blink and you might just catch him. And I feel by pure happenstance I wound up seeing his next several roles as they came out. I sat through an adult testing out their stereo system by watching Saving Private Ryan as an 8-year-old, and then my mother rented Boiler Room for some reason, which was about like shithead tech bros of the 1990s. It's like American Psycho if it exclusively focused on the characters just doing their jobs.
Put it in.
200? 200. Alright. Simple story, baby. It's nothing. You lose, man!
Vin Diesel was, and for some still is, pretty likable because aside from being charismatic in film roles, he was sort of a nerd before there was the polar shift in pop culture, and that became cool to admit publicly.
Look at this. Look at the texture. Look at the detail. Everything is so overwhelming. All the sets have been... This whole entire set has been used so effectively to create this world.
Nowadays, it's kind of backsliding to where it was before, which is for the best. But as that began to take shape, he spoke about his appreciation for Dungeons & Dragons and World of Warcraft more and more. And in his filmography, you can see him sort of trading off roles that will provide a massive paycheck with roles that are goofier in films destined to be flops, but that are a lot more fun. He came off of the 7th Fast and Furious film to do The Last Witch Hunter, which is based on his D&D character.
I am Colder the Witch Hunter, the 800-year-old immortal.
There's also the fact that, unlike others in his periphery, he didn't get to roll into a career doing brain-off car-gun shoot flicks from a career in wrestling or sports. Despite looking the way he looks, he put in the work.
The incredible hand sharks! They're alive. The kids bring them to life. Kid controlled. Punchy action. Look at that. Slow down, guys.
And had a storybook entrance into acting. As a kid, he broke into a theater in order to vandalize it and gain entrance to a gang of hardened 8-year-olds. But he was caught by a theater director that offered him an ultimatum that sitcom writers dream of. Either I turn you into the authorities, or you become my little butler. Well, in this case, actor. Vincenzo would run the gauntlet that actors do, appearing in commercials and background roles, and only earning his breakout role in Saving Private Ryan after impressing Steven Spielberg in a short film he wrote, directed, and starred in called Multifacial.
My dad was a black actor. But he wanted me to go one step further. He wanted me to be an actor. Just an actor.
He started from the bottom and climbed the ladder rung after rung, all so he could then elect to almost exclusively do brain-off car gun shoot flicks.
What did you say?
I said only pussies run nitro meth.
It's easy to create a meme out of this guy's career, and valid, due to his presence saturating an entire era of cinema's death knell. But if you ask me, he can absolutely act and play nuanced characters. If you watch something like Find Me Guilty, you can see that not only can he do comedy, he can be transformative and near unrecognizable in a role.
You see this hat? I'm wearing this hat.
He has what it takes to be an effective actor. He just keeps taking roles that don't require anything other than his name on the poster and his arms to be nude. And there's a growing disparity between him taking on projects that showcase his skill set and videos of him belligerently hitting on reporters just trying to do their job.
Guys, really? Look how beautiful she is. You guys think it's a joke? How am I supposed to sit over here when I'm looking at such beauty? Come on, guys. She's so beautiful. I'm in love. People, a lot of my friends were killed. I'm in love with the interview. You know who Gary Gygax is? He's the one that created all the books.
Oh.
I needed to do a movie where I could laugh again. I can't do this interview. Look at her. When did this turn into Beautiful World?
Worth noting that while he did apologize for his behavior in this video, he also blamed it on him being in the Xander zone. The implication being that he was stuck in some kind of Kaufman-esque method act. I guess, man. If you ask me, from the looks of it, the Xander zone is a really dark place that I hope you've moved past. Anyway, I mean, how many other chances will I get to just dish about, you know, Hollywood goss?
All the fans out there are going to want to know. Are you available?
Yes.
You are.
Are you? You've just entered the Xander zone.
The year 2000's Pitch Black was a quasi-indie sleeper sci-fi hit about a cargo ship in space that is torn apart by meteors and crash lands on a barren alien planet. Its eclectic mix of survivors soon finds that the planet was once inhabited by human researchers, but they are now all dead, killed by a species of light-sensitive bat creatures, and left lying in pits of dry bones. Thankfully, this planet has 3 suns, so all they really have to do is stay in the light. Except that they happen to crash during a complete solar eclipse that happens every 20 years or so. So they should probably leave.
Paris Péogové, Antiquities dealer, entrepreneur.
Richard B. Riddick, escaped convict, murderer.
The lasting appeal of Pitch Black comes not from its rather generic sci-fi trappings, but from its characters, who are all presented as familiar tropes, but each turned on their head. The de facto captain, after the real one died, is meant to lead our group of weary survivors, but in a moment of weakness was willing to dump them into space in order to prevent the ship from crashing. She pulls the lever and everything, but by sheer dumb luck, an error prevents it. The escaped convict, being transported to a slam, who's kept hog-tied like a futuristic fetishist, aside from being manipulative and threatening, doesn't seem to be killing off the rest of the cast, and if anything has an ability that could make or break their escape attempt. His slam job eye shine, that allows him to see vividly in the dark, is something that may have been retconned as soon as they saw potential in the character for future adventures, and is something something the game half addresses. And finally, the square-jawed hero cop with a badge and a gun, Riddick's escort to prison, who in any other film would be the one who elects to step up and save your ass. But in this one, he's actually a shady bounty hunter with a morphine addiction, and a grudge against Riddick for injuring him in one of their previous scuffles, in a way that's caused consistent pain since, and that is more directly addressed in the game. Having just revisited it after a few years, I can confidently say that this movie holds the fuck up. It's a lot of fun, and Vin is probably the best he ever was in it.
Did not know who was fucking with.
Yeah, there are some goofy CG effects, but they are eclipsed by the impressive cinematography and unique look. Scenes set in the brutal light of the three suns were accomplished with a film treatment method called bleach bypass, which retains the silver in film stock, resulting in an image that has a striking contrast and more dense grain. A lot of artsy movies have used this to great effect, like Delicatessen and City of Lost Children. And it's not like they just turned the Mexico filter on or off. It's a permanent process that can provide varied effects. So if you're doing that to the original camera negative, which David Toohey was, you're taking a considerable gamble. The creators of Pitch Black were wise enough to know that this movie works when the creatures are only hinted at, and when its anti-hero routinely emerges from behind a wall of darkness like a goddamn vampire. He is wonderfully rendered as a being that operates in much the same way as the cold, calculated predators that plague our cast. Something Brazil would soon learn. There is a lot in this movie that is just waiting to be gamified. Certainly Riddick's ability and the climax of the film is a sequence where the surviving characters have to transport power cells across treacherous terrain. I was thinking, I swear I've played this exact thing before. Two characters complete an arc, Caroline and Riddick. The former is more pronounced and powerful. She goes from attempting to kill the entire cast in a desperate act of self-preservation to admitting that she is willing to die to save the two that remain, only to then be killed trying to protect Riddick. The fact that Caroline tried to jettison the passengers gets outed in front of everyone later, but Riddick knew the entire time because he was the only one not asleep during the crash. So when he witnesses this woman redeem herself, and that moment is sort of wasted on him, it hits him kind of hard.
Not for me. Not for me.
This is the only moment in the film where he breaks his icy facade and is compelled to genuinely look out for someone other than himself, perhaps to balance some perceived scale. And I just got to thinking while playing Escape from Butcher Bay that this side of Riddick is completely absent from this game. They nailed the stoic one-liner machine part of him, but when you think about it, you're playing as Riddick pre-character development, so he lacks this spark of humanity and is kind of just a bad guy from start to finish. The first film to feature Riddick in it is Pitch Black in the year 2000, but prior to that he would be introduced in a promotional Flash cartoon, pretty much just illustrating Riddick's story about how he got his eyes shined. If you're not old enough to remember what a Flash cartoon was, I don't want to hear about it. Okay?
You take up a doctor, and you pay him 20 menthol cools to do a surgical shine job on your eyeballs.
This is a short comic book style cartoon that takes Riddick's story as the truth, even though the creators would later decide to make the origin of his eyes more vague. But true to the dialogue, we see Riddick pay 20 menthol cools to a prison doctor to inject some kind of reflective goop into his eyes in order to help him escape a prison satellite of sorts. Aside from the novelty and nostalgia of this thing's existence, I did find it interesting that they actually recreate a scene from it in Pitch Black's sequel, where after once again finding himself in a wacky space prison, this time in an underground one on a planet with a perpetually volcanic surface, prisoners are forced to return to their cells when the guards release these alien hounds that Riddick is told not to make eye contact with, so he immediately does. But I think the animal just gives him a look that says, "You and I are not so different." And then there is a comedic jump cut to Riddick petting it.
It's an animal thing.
In the comic, this is actually just Earth dogs, though. At a certain point, David Toohey and the keepers of the Riddick lore started phasing out things that would reference Earth and familiar pop culture stuff as well, while still making Riddick wear a black tank top, which only becomes more appropriate the more the franchise becomes a vanity project.
You killed the only woman I ever loved, and it's payback time.
Hey Johnny, what's going on, man?
Oh, hi Mike, what's new? How you doing?
The Riddick-verse utilizes every avenue of content imaginable, any excuse to play around in its world for even a second longer to tongue the corner of the Riddick bag, and they took it. A month before the release of Pitch Black, the Sci-Fi Channel, then still using the traditional spelling, would air a special titled Into Pitch Black, which is part clip show of the movie and part expanded lore short film that was written by some other guys and is full of choices that the following films would contradict. An oddity that I find to be adorable. It is one of the most shamelessly, earnestly the year 2000 things to exist, displaying this particular look that is halfway between a full motion video point-and-click adventure game and a video you would see waiting in line for a ride at Disneyland. It's that clashing of them clearly having some kind of budget for set and costume design, but it's still shot on video with constant Dutch angles and goofy computer interfaces. It attempts to fill in a bunch of gaps that it created, getting real in the weeds about things completely peripheral to Riddick's time on Pitch Black Planet. We see the mercenary who was hired after Johns was killed, who is apparently some kind of dork in a duster. I'd be more incendiary with my description, but I simply see too much of myself in him. We also see a group of investigators that show up on the planet in the movie and try to recover the cargo that Caroline dumped. There's a guy psychoanalyzing Riddick and an interview with the doctor that gave him the shine job. It's actually quite bad, but in a very endearing way. It reminds me of trying to make little movies as a 15-year-old. None of it matches the tone of the film at all, and would be more at home on a Sega CD release. It just needs some compression and interlacing. But one detail I thought was very Riddick was when the psychiatrist has Riddick draw his earliest memory, and he instead draws a detailed map of the prison and the path he's going to take to escape from it.
So tell me what you're hiding.
What am I hiding?
Something that scares the piss out of you.
As part of the Summer of Riddick in 2004, Pitch Black was reissued on a collector's edition DVD that included these little audio diaries of Johns, voiced by Cole Hauser, and they exist as a retroactive bridge between Escape from Butcher Bay and Pitch Black, briefly referencing the game's setting and some of its characters.
I got some distance between us and Butcher Bay and Hoxie's ship before Riddick dosed me and left me for dead. It's lucky I don't die easy.
So there's flash animations, TV specials, DVD interactive menu content.
There's a great Riddick app. I don't know if anybody knows it.
And that's to say nothing of the raves. There were Pitch Black raves to promote the film. They functioned a lot like regular raves, but there were big screens showing clips of the film, and halfway through, an eclipse would happen, and they would turn the lights out and start playing the sounds of the alien creatures while whipping glow sticks at your head. Following Pitch Black was a barrage of Riddick content because by now, Vin Diesel had starred in The Fast and Furious and XXX, and both had done very well for Universal, so they were scrambling to pump out more reasons to put his face on posters, preferably in something with stakes higher than a truckload of DVD players. They looked at this small-scale indie cult horror movie, and it was assessed for potential milking. This content blitz, all coinciding in June of 2004, included The Chronicles of Riddick, The Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay, and The Chronicles of Riddick Dark Fury. The sequel to Pitch Black could not be further from its predecessor. It's a grand, high fantasy, hard sci-fi space opera with a budget in excess of $100 million. 11 of that going just to Vincente. What was once a rather inconsequential tale of survival concerning a collection of spacer randos on a no-name planet now features a world-ending plot amidst various alien planets, races, and religions, where once I was complimenting the subtlety and restraint of Pitch Black's world building, given mere hints at what what life in this galaxy looked like and how it functioned off this barren desert. Little did I know they'd just dive headfirst into jargon-heavy exposition dumps like Warhammer 40k meets David Lynch's Dune. Chronicles, logically, the next piece of Riddick's Chronicles. I fucking hate that naming convention. Just do Riddick 1, Riddick 2, Riddick 3. I'd even accept, Riddick A Pitch Black Tale or some shit like that.
The chronological order of this mythology, because as you know, if you've seen Chronicles of...
The next piece of media, even though it was released a few months after the sequel, is actually the animated direct-to-DVD short Dark Fury, which was written by David Twohy, but directed by Peter Chung, if that wasn't obvious just by looking at it. You may recognize his work from the hugely influential MTV series Aeon Flux. Over the years, he's contributed to many fun projects like The Animatrix, but Aeon Flux was the purest causeway to the machinery of his brain. It picks up pretty much right after the events of Pitch Black, with Riddick, a teenage girl that was posing as a boy to seem tough named Jack, and a holy man named Imam, which that's not his real name, but that's what Riddick calls him, floating in their two-seater craft, waiting to be hopefully picked up by space truckers. This, of course, immediately does not go as planned when they are instead picked up by a mercenary ship, in the control of a psycho that doesn't want to turn criminals in for the cash reward, but rather paralyze them and pose them as living sculptures to stare at while reclined in a sofa eating grapes. Given its director, it's very imaginative and strange. There's a great sequence where Riddick fights what looks to be a giant bacteria, or just a heartless. It features a lot of unique and fluid animation that plays around with distorted angles and fisheyes. That's a huge part of the appeal. If you're gonna consume anything Riddick, and you're not a gamer, at the very least pick up the Arrow release of Pitch Black, because it includes Dark Fury as a bonus feature. It also has Into Pitch Black and Slam City, which I find particularly astounding. That a Flash animation is on a 4K Ultra Blu-ray. Aside from the wonderful animation, I think all you're meant to take in from Dark Fury into Chronicles of Riddick is the bridging piece of lore that Riddick now has a large bounty on his head from a pretty formidable group of mercenaries led by a guy named Toombs that would hunt him across the galaxy. And so, even though he's built some kind of relationship with these two characters, he drops them off in New Mecca and tries to keep the mercenaries on his tail instead of theirs. 2004's The Chronicles of Riddick picks up where Dark Fury left off, and Riddick has been hiding on an uncolonized, snow-covered planet. Actually, if you play, I'm gonna get real tired of saying both the words Chronicle and Riddick, and even the and of. If you play The Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay Developer's Cut, it's bookended by scenes that are meant to bridge the game to the second film, in which Riddick is seen hunting some kind of big-footed cryptid and is visited by an ethereal character named Shira that also appears in the film. She reminds him of his escape from Butcher Bay, and thus the whole game is a memory he's recalling while standing above a dead Yeti talking to a ghost. I'm not too sure why they eventually just got rid of this in its final version, but maybe they saw the need to bridge a prequel story to the first story's sequel as being pointlessly convoluted. The film could have picked up right after that cutscene, as Toombs and a team of mercs have tracked down Riddick and are feebly attempting to capture him. It's actually a really strong opening. I think because they treat Riddick like a slasher villain, and it stays on the mercs as they are picked off one by one. It's also just somewhat grounded and low stakes, which the rest of the film is not. I don't think we should downplay the effects of Vin Diesel on the writing of this one, because there is a pronounced fantasy tone, specifically of the Dungeons and Dragons variety, and that is introduced even from the opening monologue from Judi Dench, who is in this film for some reason, and plays an air elemental. Her name is also, and I shit you not, Arion. The wider narrative concerns an intergalactic death cult called the Necromongers. They've been invading planets and destroying all life on them, converting the dead into reanimated and reprogrammed soldiers. They do this in hopes of reaching a dark afterlife paradise named the Underverse. They are led by the Lord Marshal, who has seen the Underverse and returned, now living as something in between life and death, soul and body out of sync. After interrogating Toombs, he pulls out of him him that it was Imam from Pitch Black that put this particular bounty on him. So in Toombs' ship, he flies to New Mecca in order to confront him. Knowing how Riddick operates, Imam knew this would be the only way of getting his attention. What he really wanted was to bring Riddick to Arion, who explains the threat of the Necromongers and that he may play a role in a prophecy the elementals have presaged. They reveal that Riddick's mysterious past is in part that way because his memories have been supernaturally repressed. The truth is, he belongs to a race of beings named Furians. Not only that, he may be the last one in the galaxy. When the Lord Marshal learned about the prophecy in which a single Furian would lead to the downfall of the Necromongers, he destroyed, or attempted to rather, his home planet's entire population. So yeah, a lot bigger than crashing on a planet with pterodactyls.
Anybody that's ever played a Death Knight in World of Warcraft knows what a fucking Necromonger is and where they got the Death Knights from. Just to be real here.
This movie was written for its $100 million budget, so anything that could be an expensive effects shot or giant set or elaborate costume, they went for it.
Very safe for the actors. We worked on this for months.
The trade-off for this budget was that the film had to shoot for a PG-13 rating, and you can sort of see the scars of that, even though the script probably didn't call for anything close to the adult content in Pitch Black. There's one utterance of fuck. Nobody gets torn in half or injects morphine into their eye, and yet something happened to this film. A compromise was made. In the theatrical cut, certain action scenes, namely the penultimate showdown between Riddick, some slam escapees, and a squad of Necromongers, is curiously just like missing an audio track. I would barely consider this an edit, just the deletion of a couple layers of sound. So you can hear the music and some background foley, but that's it. It's such a bizarre choice, like they may have included like a licensed song they couldn't get the rights to anymore, so this is all that's left. I don't know how you watch that and don't feel like something is wrong. You maybe could have covered this up as Riddick is going completely fucking twisted psycho mode, so that's disorienting. But you gotta add like some ringing sounds, a rising score, anything. The inevitable unrated director's cut that would be issued on DVD, aside from adding in a bunch of like horny scenes that didn't make the cut, goes back to that fight scene and returns the missing sound layer and makes it louder than the other ones. So now you can hear Riddick grunting, you can hear his ulak knives making impact, but the music and background foley is so muted that it's somehow just as awkward. Riddick is appropriately not interested in taking part in this quest, but is interested when Imam mentions that Jack has been imprisoned in a slam called Crematoria. In the middle of explaining this, the Necromongers show up and begin wreaking havoc, which results in Imam dying while trying to lead a group of them away from his family. Forgetting that he is a stealth guy, Riddick shows up, uncrouched, to a gathering of the Necromongers, and tracks down the exact one that killed him and defeats him in front of his buddies. He is then sort of captured by them. They don't seem all that concerned, so he isn't restrained or anything, but they scan him with some kind of bizarre, otherworldly device and determine that he's Furian and attempt to kill him. But he's inadvertently rescued by Toombs, who coincidentally wants to collect his bounty at Crematoria. Right before they get there, we get a scene where Toombs is rattling off potential slams he could take Riddick to.
Who's gonna pay the most for you now? Butcher Bay?
Butcher Bay.
And this is the only reference to Butcher Bay in the films, or rather in the theatrical cut. The version shown in theaters completely omits two scenes in which Riddick is visited by the ghost of a Furian named Shira, which happens in Butcher Bay and would have strengthened the connection to the two. In both media, she operates kind of like Maria in the opening of Symphony of the Night, where he's up against insurmountable odds and then she just appears and makes him go Super Saiyan. On Crematoria, Riddick is violently reunited with Jack, who has embraced their femininity and renamed themselves Kira. In the time between films, Kira has become nearly as adept at killing and doing crimes as Riddick, and she's also really bitter about him dropping her off in New Mecca and breaking contact, something he did as a clumsy attempt at protecting her. The two can sort of come to an alliance in order to escape as the mercs fight with the guards over payment for Riddick. While this chaos is erupting, the planet is about to be hit with so much heat that you could melt if you were on the surface. Also, the Necromongers show up, having followed tombs there. All of the stuff in the prison is really strong, and I found myself repeatedly wishing that this was simply a prison escape film, but a prison with alien hazards and weird rules and gangs and shit. There's a scene where Riddick kills a guy with a teacup.
What's that? I'll kill you with my teacup.
Like, I truly don't get it, because this is where the character works, but they were like, man, we're so far out from the Avengers, the blockbuster's gonna live forever. There are other moving parts and characters in this 2-hour epic, like Carl Urban's character, Vaco, and his wife, who are conspiring to overthrow the Lord Marshal, and a ragtag team of prisoners. Riddick doesn't so much befriend as allow to orbit the plot, and it's all fine, but I can't shake the feeling that it's unnecessary. I was never interested in Riddick because I was also interested in space Brits arguing about space politics. I literally, truly, just wanted to see Vin Diesel skulk around in the dark wearing a tank top and occasionally say something threatening in a gravelly voice. You'd be surprised how much that does not happen, given that this film is part of a trilogy that never was. I can forgive some of its time mismanagement concerning these fair weather side characters that are, mostly there to demonstrate a danger for Riddick by dying. But because it sheds itself of any remaining tether to Pitch Black and maroons the character in this new world that expands in several directions, I can't deny that it probably really needed 2 more movies for Riddick to achieve some kind of a greater purpose. As it stands, they just kind of repeat what happens to him in Pitch Black, where he is given one singular moment of emotional turmoil that he is great at displaying, but I'd just love to explore that for a couple seconds more, huh? How many people have to die before you finally have some kind of breakthrough? They give more of a cohesive arc to this guy, who had like 2 scenes and whose name I don't remember, but he's a converted Furian that manages to overcome his programming and elect to help Riddick before going out on his own terms, and I was almost pissed at how moving this was. He even gets a Blade Runner, all these memories like Tears and Rain monologue that the actor also improvised and they decided to keep.
I've done unbelievable things in the name of a faith that was never my own.
Very cool, but why this guy? But it's not like all that money went nowhere. There are some very impressive, grand, opulent space cathedral halls and some really inspired design choices. I actually really like the way that Necromongers communicate with each other across galaxies. They slide a half-dead body draped in a cloth out of a mausoleum of sorts and speak through a goblet full of vibrating liquid, essentially using a corpse as a phone. Vaco even kisses his wife using the 2 bodies as a proxy. So I have mixed feelings about the Chronicles of Riddick. On one hand, there are certainly sequences that I think are great. The Merc attack on the snow planet, the Crematoria escape, these feel like individual, entire premises for Riddick movies. But the whole business with the Necromongers and the ancient prophecy is a big, goofy, baroque thing to make work, and it doesn't always work. And sometimes it would get to the point where I would just laugh. Like when there's just one guy that the main villain tears his soul out of him because he can just do that, and he never does it again. But it's like, am I bothered that it's so silly? I don't think so. Vin is having a lot of fun with the role, even though he's a little less grounded, a little less street, and more like a Tolkien-esque rogue. I can't imagine this Riddick saying,
"Ghost me, motherfucker, that's what I would do to you."
It continues to pick out the vague details of Riddick's past, like his eyes and the fact that he was found as a baby in a dumpster with his umbilical cord around his neck, and then it retrofits these things to have meaning beyond simply happening, and I don't think that feels organic in the slightest. It's like in Star Wars, when Han says he did a cool thing that was just jargon that only existed to make another character go, wow, impressive, and then years later They were like, well, obviously we have to show him doing the cool thing, right? He wouldn't have brought it up if it wasn't important. Not once did I think, boy, I hope they go into why somebody threw a baby in a dumpster. And yet, if it came on TV and I still actively watched live television, I wouldn't turn it off. I might even elect to watch it if the mood struck. There's an interview with David Twohy after Chronicles came out and was not successful. And I love this anecdote because it's illustrative of how much they seem to love the material and were convinced that this was a killer idea that Universal would be fools to turn down. When they pitched the Chronicles of Riddick, it was done with a clear line of comparison to The Lord of the Rings, with Pitch Black standing as The Hobbit, the small story that introduces a larger world.
We gave the studio 3 leather binders that were locked. And they were for 3 different movies. And we only gave the head of the studio a key for the first binder.
Of course, the other 2 were props and didn't have a completed script in them, but they were cultivating a vibe that is so dorky it's admirable, if completely unneeded, because it sounds like they would have just said yes to a colonoscopy video if Vin Diesel was on board. It was the summer of Vin!
Fucking insulting.
You know, I like the 3rd Riddick movie. It shows how much the series needed to be scaled back and how much it needed to be R-rated. You can tell they wanted to front-load it with F-bombs, nudity, and beheadings.
Give us the dark
yes.
Riddick.
There's like a 10-minute wordless sequence of Vin crawling around with a broken leg, trying to fend off a series of hostile alien creatures, and it feels sort of grueling and tense in a way that was exciting. He seems different, or maybe just older. The playful Riddick of Pitch Black is gone, and he seems more pensive and depressed, like becoming a god in the last film didn't bring him any kind of happiness, and all he wants is a home, a place to store his various goggles. So say what you will about the film Riddick, but goddamn do I respect the hustle in getting this thing made, because I don't think many people were asking for it. After Chronicles of Riddick flopped, Universal was in the middle of digging the franchise's grave when Vin Diesel himself made a bid to buy the character of Riddick from them.
And they said, no, we can't do that for you. It's okay.
Even though Universal had no intention of ever exhuming Riddick, it was to be shuffled somewhere in a labyrinthine warehouse of dead dreams, alongside a dusty chained-up crate labeled Dark Universe. While this was happening, the 3rd Fast and Furious film, titled Tokyo Drift, was being filmed. Vin Diesel had, until now, been fundamentally against the idea of the Fast and the Furious becoming a franchise, and thus refused to be in the second one. So Universal was feeling a little insecure about how this movie was coming together, seeing as though it would be introducing a new cast and not really offering any touchstones of the franchise besides, cars that look like cars that I actively avoid by several lengths on the freeway. In an effort to feel better about this, they asked Vin to make a cameo in Tokyo Drift, and his agent explained to him that by them asking this of him, it means he can get nearly anything he wants out of them, like, say, the rights to that Riddick guy I was just talking about. And then I'm guessing the Furious verse was offering enough jaw-dropping paychecks that he figured, well, what's a few more of these, huh? But hang on. What are these about? Vin had to put a lot of his own money down to get another one of these out, and even leveraged his home at one point just so he could wander around a green screen and fight cartoon dogs. But you know what? It's got less than half the budget of the previous movie, but still looks just as stylized and futuristic. There's just fewer characters, fewer locations, fewer sweeping shots of legions of spaceships shooting out of a floating obelisk. Fights are well choreographed. It's solid. All of them are, more or less. It's workhorse sci-fi. It's a sack of rice sci-fi, Are any of these similes landing? Let me know in the comments of someone else's video. At the time of my writing, it is my understanding that the 4th entry in the Riddick universe is being filmed, and they've chosen this production still to build hype for it, which I feel like I would have taken issue with. We all have angles, The dreamers continue to dream, and somewhere, slithering beneath rocks and covered in tall grass, is a starved cult following, eagerly anticipating the next and perhaps final chapter of Riddick's story.
Pitch Black, Chronicles of Riddick, and the newest one, Riddick. So, here I am.
So eager that they've flooded search results with AI-generated trailers. So awful and void of any redeeming creative merit that surely they must be the spasm of a desperate fandom. Most aspects of Escape from Butcher Bay came together at the 11th hour, including its plot, which was originally much more ambitious. It was originally meant to follow Riddick across 3 different prisons on a prison planet, one on its surface, another beneath a layer of ice, and the final on a satellite orbiting around the other 2. This was stripped down to the first prison, with the concepts for the other 2 sort of truncated to fit into the first, which honestly may have been for the best. The fluctuating scale of the Riddick universe displays that it's strongest when Riddick is just a little guy, and not a king of space or whatever. Sometime before Pitch Black, a restrained Riddick is led by his budding nemesis Johns onto an inescapable wasteland planet that is home only to a city-sized prison colony with its own little economy and infrastructure that again was going to be explored more in the original plans, but for now we'll have to find contentment with this rather lovely skybox. In a tense confrontation, the 2 start hashing out a deal for Riddick's bounty with the warden of Butcher Bay, Hoxie, who clearly has a long history of being disappointed by Johns. The game really doubles down on Johns being a spineless loser. Well, soon to be spineless anyhow. In a sequence sourced from Half-Life, Riddick is led to his cell by the head of security, Abbott, and along the way reminds you that nobody has ever escaped Butcher Bay. And even if you made it outside the walls, still prison. And even if you made it outside the walls, claimed a plot of land and started a farm, general store, and bank, and dubbed yourself mayor and sheriff of Cool Guys Freedom City, you start establishing a school, a police force, maybe a jail, institutions, systems that all operate as prisons, as repressions. Don't you get it? You'll never get out! The Riddick franchise is so preoccupied with the profession of bounty hunting, but I don't feel like I know enough about how it works to understand whether or not it's sustainable at all. Danger aside, there is no part of it besides maybe the travel that seems worth it. There's like a haggling element involved as well, where mercs try to shake down slams for more space dollars, and going off how the real world works, or my country at least, where prisons generate profit by way of legal slave labor. I could guess that it works more directly, where they are more openly just trading bodies for a wad of cash. But what would they get out of a criminal with a large bounty like Riddick? Perhaps it would add some degree of prestige, you know? The slam that held the infamous Riddick. Other than that, it just seems like a huge liability. Wouldn't whoever set the bounty, some governing entity, want him extradited to whatever star system he was? Single Max is one of few areas in the game that resembles a regular earthly prison, a stifling maze of concrete and metal, varnished with rust and dried blood. There are cells with toilets, a yard where you can soak in the sun, or reflect on where that one last score went wrong. Everything was planned to the last detail. How did they know we were coming? There must have been a rat. Oh, they better pray I don't. Inmates trade cigarettes for currency, and currency for shivs or drugs. This first hub area is oddly the part of the game that I think occupies the most of my memories of Butcher Bay. It feels like a natural extension of the world presented in Pitch Black, but you're only there for an hour or 2 before plunging into higher security levels beneath. I remember being so sucked in by the grimy, oppressive atmosphere and the unique characters. Aside from some of the guards, nobody in the game is a copy and pasted person. Each one, no matter how inconsequential, has a name, a face, and some quirk or catchphrase to share. And much like the opening of Half-Life, there are numerous micro moments and interactions between them that just make it feel both alive and lived in. There is a routine to life here, and Riddick is a disruptive element, and opportunity for others to enact vengeance, climb the prison hierarchy, or maybe, just maybe, get out. Many of these characters are renderings of the developers' faces, which was not meant to be the plan, but it was more a case that one of them got put in to save time, and then there was a series of, so I hear we're putting gens in the game. Why not put me, Anders, son of Anders, son of Anders? I'm gonna sneeze. Riddick immediately clocks the pit, essentially a huge manhole leading to the prison sewer system, as Single Max's obvious exploit, which a former guard turned prisoner named Haley can help you navigate. He knows this whole prison inside and out. He's been in the shit and the piss. Before that, there is the matter of Rust, head of the Aquilin gang, a sort of puppet installation by Abbott so he can keep tabs on everyone. Rust and Haley are good examples of how this game says a lot with a little. You could pretty much sum up who they are in a short blurb, but they feel so woven into the setting, and it doesn't hurt that they are well performed. Rust is immediately, exceedingly punchable as he awkwardly swaggers in, confident in his safety as Abbott's little pet. After Abbott sort of asserts dominance over him in front of Riddick, embarrassing him, Rust sends word that he wants to fight Riddick, proving his hyper-masculinity and self-determination by sending a friend along with a little note. Once in Aquilin territory, the whole gang runs up to defend their beanie-clad leader. Needless to say, not a fair fight. Oh, fuck. Never mind. Guys? If maybe you were thinking that I was trapped in here with you? I would propose that the inverse of that arrangement is more like, with Rust defeated, Riddick has created a power vacuum, and Abbott offers him the opportunity of replacing him, getting a comparatively easy ride at Butcher Bay. But he responds with thunderous ellipses. In the midst of the riot triggered by Rust's death, Riddick makes his way to the pit, first making a detour to the prison's mainframe. One of the first things the game teaches you about its world is why nobody just wrestles a gun out of a guard's hands. Because they are DNA coded, and will fry anyone whose fingerprints aren't in the computer system. Thankfully, there's only one guy with a screwdriver safeguarding it.
The mainframe. Security will be tight. I like a challenge.
This general disregard for the safety and well-being of Butcher Bay's prisoners escalates the deeper you head into it, but there is an endearingly mean spirit to its world that is not replicated in any of the films. I love how many things are designed to be unpleasant for no real reason. Med stations fire a series of syringes into your neck, and health upgrades restrain you and ram several more down your chest. It brought to mind the fact that in Pitch Black, Johns shoots his morphine into his eye, which he doesn't exactly need to do, right? But it's the distant future, so maybe that's the only way this works now. It's kind of like how they deter you from inhaling dust off by making it taste really, really bad. Oh, you'll be blissed out like no other high, but you have to do the Dead Space QuickTime event every time. With unrestricted access to weapons, Riddick cuts a path to the pit's entrance and rides a man inside it, saying verbatim the name of a trope on the way down. The pit represents a third genre shift, from a stealth game to a shooter and now a horror game, as we frantically make our way through dark tunnels with a flickering flashlight threateningly counting down its dwindling battery life as waves of gibbering ghouls attack us, the Dwellers. One of the broader but more fun ideas dreamt up by Starbreeze, they are essentially the Descent's cannibals, prisoners that have perpetuated down here, retreating to some feral primitive state. It's kind of weird though, the Dwellers were designed to be literally just crouched and deformed naked humans, but the team naively forgot that this would be more taboo in the US than the wholesale slaughter taking place during the level. It's almost like they placated us with violence, you know? Like, alright, well, if we can't have a naked ghoul, then what about a body exploding into jibs? Would you like that? Would that be good for you? The silly outcome of this not making it past Universal was that the Dwellers still included rigging for genitalia. They simply edited the model so it looked like they did have a but don't anymore, which is infinitely more gruesome and yet led to some producer saying, alright, that's more like it, while reclining in a chair. Down here, we meet a character named Pope Joe that will fix your bleeding arm if you retrieve his voice box, a radio that loops religious sermons, which make vague reference to the Underverse, spreading the gospel beyond the Church of the Galaxy to a Church of the Dead.
This church is going to be in fellowship with that new ministry for the dead. They will expose the door's last hidden secrets. Oh, and they will be criticized for the way they look. But I'm in them. I'm in them, says the Lord.
This entire character was a rejected idea from Chronicles of Riddick that was basically a name and a blurb, but he's somewhat significant to a character-defining moment for Riddick, a part of his mythology. Starbreeze reached into David Tui's trash can and fished out this guy. What, you just gonna toss this out? So Pope Joe is meant to be the recipient of the famed 20 menthol cools in exchange for permanent raccoon vision, but the continuity of the new film sort of interrupts that moment with a different idea. I honestly didn't know how to feel about this when I first played it. While Pope Joe stitches up Riddick's arm, time seems to freeze and we hear the voice of Shira, unnamed in this game, who remotely unlocks the ability for him, retconning the origin of this power. I guess it wouldn't have sounded like much of a scared straight tough guy line if he had responded to
"Where the hell can I get eyes like that?"
with "A hot ghost from the alien race I'm the sole survivor of reminded me that my eyes just do that. And during the period I forgot, my eyes were just normal." I don't mean to linger on this to pad the runtime. You know? You get what I'm saying. Yeah, you get. But it feels like a literal interruption of the previous idea. Pope Joe even has dialogue that makes it sound like he's setting the table for you to get your eyes shined.
You need that gaze that shows right from wrong and reveals the door.
Ooh, I know what that means. I hope nobody subverts my expectations. He didn't endure anything to receive it. He wasn't granted it after some great trial. It seemed quite arbitrary. Never got why two things couldn't be true. So like, yeah, he's a super special spaceman, whatever. But also he did this fucked up thing to his eyes so he could be better at escaping prisons. If you would like to experience the plot of this game on your own and not have it spoiled for you, feel free to skip to this time, where I will conclude my thoughts in a roundabout way. Or maybe I'm just telling you what you want to hear, to gain your trust. Maybe I want something from you, and maybe it's to spoil the game for you. Maybe I just want to do that. You know what? When I get there, I'll make a choice. If you make it there and I haven't spoiled it for you, then count yourself lucky.
Day 1 on Prison Planet. My first priority should be finding some cigarettes. The more the better. Secondary is shelter. Death from exposure is just as likely as death from lack of smoke. The pain shoots down my entire body, but is localized around the head for obvious reasons. Day 2 on Prison Planet.
Riddick emerges from the pit into Pigsville, the housing area for prison guards, which is not exactly a glamorous upgrade from Single Max. Sure, there are amenities like privacy and shops, but it feels like an extension of the same bleak and blocky architecture, like you're walking around inside a massive industrial oven. The first time I played this game, I underestimated its ability to let you take alternative paths in this one scenario. I just emerged from the sewer and started blasting, and I don't think it's telegraphed all that well, but if you restrain yourself from what feels natural and correct for a moment, you can find a civilian guard outfit that allows you to walk around this whole area and not have to kill a single one of them. But of course, where's the fun in that? One way or another, Riddick makes his way to Abbott's apartment and guns him down. He's about to finish him off when he's stopped by Johns, who was presumably hiding in the room that is his namesake. He's finally gonna start taking matters into his own hands and suggests they leave Butcher Bay together and go to one of the other prison planets so he can actually get paid for once. Unfortunately, Hoxie and a squad of guards also emerge from the same single stall toilet. Johns embarrassingly tries to negotiate some payout while he's being beaten by Hoxie and limps away with an agreement for 22% of Riddick's bounty. Finding it to be no coincidence that a riot started, several guards are dead, and his right-hand man is currently bleeding out the same day this guy showed up, Hoxie sends him to Double Max Security Underground, where inmates are stored in a wall of shipping containers along a shaft stretching into an abyss that occasionally opens to let you stretch your legs and meet one of 100 hazards that would free up your spot. They are fished from the heavens by a large claw machine arm and then shuffled off to recreation areas and cafeterias and then shipped back. There is a strong concept for this part of the prison. It feels really particular, really cinematic. And that may be because it was one of, if not the first areas of the game developed and used to pitch its prototype, remaining largely unchanged from that. It's not visible at any point in the game, but the devs spoke about an imagined shower function of these towers, where essentially there is a hierarchy to the position in the shaft. And during shower time, a stream of water is let loose from the top of the tower, going through a series of holes that cuts through every container to the bottom, meaning the guy at the top is the only one who gets clean water, and it gets progressively more filthy as it trickles down until the guy at the bottom gets the soup that remains. This was dreamt up simply as a means of grounding the technology and design of this place to feel realistic and not as some poignant commentary on class. Down here, a man named Jagger Valance has captured the hearts and minds of the inmates. He's the only one who's managed to escape the block and hide out in the mines below. Which is, sure, yeah, probably difficult to accomplish, but it's a bit of a lateral move. Okay, you escaped the prison to a different part of the prison? One where you have to do unpaid labor? You could have just stayed up here and eaten moths until your genetic makeup is rewritten. You become a pool of primordial jelly encased in a silken cocoon. They all assume if anyone knows how to help Riddick escape, it would be him. The ultimate goal of this area is to provoke Abbott to make an appearance, who is somehow already recovered from the little dust-up we had. The knuckle supper I gave him. One way to go about this is to participate in a series of death matches until you rack up a body count that simply cannot be ignored. Or you could expedite that process by accumulating an unacceptable amount of space drug. Only the strong stuff. We're talking 100% pure, uncut, real, actual shit. This may be the longest sequence that is mostly preoccupied with talking to different characters and performing little tasks for them, punctuated when you occasionally have to kill one, or occasionally have the opportunistic desire to kill them for no real gain other than doing, brother, there's a darkness inside me, and if I don't feed that darkness, well, he might go walking out into the light. Or something like that. There's a lot of characters in this level, and again, none of them are repeated. Each are their own special type of guy.
Leave me alone!
Alright. But the engine's limitations are cleverly hidden from you thanks to the layout of the recreation area being sort of split into wedges, so you only see 4 or so at a time. One of my favorite dialogue moments of the game, besides everything that Riddick says, is the extended conversation you can happen by, where just a bunch of dummies are talking about Sigmund Freud, the guy who discovered the mind. It's almost inharmoniously funny. There are a lot of funny moments in this game, but few of them feel like bits.
This guy, he like discovered the mind and shit and everything. Dreams, subconscious, hypnotizing, and fucking who knows what else. You don't say.
I would later come to find out that this whole exchange was actually rejected by VUG. They reiterated that they don't want any of the characters referencing historic figures and pop culture stuff, because who's to say that in Chronicles of Riddick Book 2 Fury of the Skull or whatever, Riddick won't come to learn Sigmund Freud never existed or something. I think you'd have to stretch pretty far to find this exchange as intrusive, but they instructed Starbreeze to remove it. Admirably, the whole team really liked this scene, and rather than fighting with VUG over its inclusion, they just hit a random assortment of keys and said, okay, it's deleted, after either scoring some shit or killing some guys, including Bam.
Now there's only one remaining, and that's Bam.
With Bam defeated, Abbott finally shows up to teach Riddick a lesson, taking him around a blind corner with no security camera, a tactic my mother employed with Kmart dressing rooms. Unlucky for these guys, Shira once again allows Riddick to tap into his Furian abilities. The guards recognize Riddick's boundless, untethered fury and elect to throw themselves into the walls rather than face him in combat. After a tense standoff, Abbott, the terror of Butcher Bay, is slain. Down in the mines, we finally come face to face with the mythical Jagger Valance, whose status as king of the mines is made clear by way of the application of sunglasses in a cave. But he's far less imposing than expected. He's also clearly not well, hacking up a lung in between every sentence. He's devised and edited a plan of escape for the two, such that he doesn't get in Riddick's way. The plan is to detonate a bomb in a nearby cavern that was abandoned due to its proximity to a nest of subterranean alien predators called Xenos. This would serve as a distraction while the two can make a run for the spaceport and hijack a transport ship. In the original release, it does kind of just play out like that. You go get the bomb from Jupiter, bring it back down here, and then blow it up. But in the developer's cut, they added an entirely different sequence where you instead hijack and pilot a Riot Guard power armor suit and blast your way back down to the mine, passing by a wanted board populated by photos of the dev team. On one hand, it's very cool that Starbreeze saw the fact that you couldn't get in that suit as an obvious missed opportunity, but it's also a substantially more destructive and distracting thing to do than set off like a dinky soda can cherry bomb in the deepest depths of a tunnel. I will say it does make the following sequence make slightly more sense, and was likely planned to always be there. Because in the original, as soon as you're handed the bomb, Jupiter is gunned down by guards. With the added context of the riot suit sequence, it makes more sense that Riddick brought the heat to Jupiter and made him a casualty, instead of them just door open kill a guy. But yeah, he was handing him a bomb, but like, how would you know? How would they know? And why would you then shoot at the bomb? They recognized this bomb so quickly and accurately that it may as well have been a copy of the Chronicles of Riddick.
Yeah! I'm gonna put my fist through the drywall.
After riding a series of rails to avoid capture, Riddick returns to the mines and Jagger has already left for the spaceport. After the bomb is planted, Riddick emerges from the collapsed area with his hands in his pockets, whistling a jaunty yet nonchalant tune. Oh fuck. He's right at an angle where you can see him but I can't, isn't he?
I think you're gonna need backup.
Damn, that was easy.
Right? Big guy like that, I thought he'd put up more of a fight.
Did he get piss on you too, Tommy?
Nah, what do you think I wear this thing? Smart. Smart.
As the guards attempt to ship Riddick back to his place in the tower, the bomb goes off, rocking the tram system and sending the box plummeting into a cave. This sequence is the closest the game gets to simulating pitch black. It's fleeting, but sweet. The two guards escorting Riddick split up and one nervously holds him at gunpoint while looking back for his buddy, and it reminded me just how intimidating he is in that film.
Darkness. You afraid? I'm not. The dark is afraid of me.
To be fair, the films abandoned the creepy little guy aspect of Riddick, who would just appear from behind a blanket of darkness and pretend that he did not just do that. As the Xenos come crawling out of the darkness to defend their lair, we also get what we call a direct reference around these parts.
Beautiful.
A lot like our journey into the pit, Riddick runs through an abandoned part of the prison populated by skittering horrors and attempts to quickly revive some old mining equipment and take a shortcut up to the spaceport. The spooky atmosphere of these areas slough off the closer you get to the surface, and it becomes one of the longer shooting galleries. The distraction is working like a charm as guards do battle with Xenos as they invade different areas through vents and cracked walls. Once aboard the escape vehicle, Jagger is trying desperately to pry open the cockpit door with a Phillips head, and I'm becoming rapidly disillusioned with his mythic escape artistry. We don't have time to... What was that? After Riddick takes over, Johns once again emerges from the shadows of a nearby toilet and knocks down Jagger. This time around, Riddick does not seem to be in the mood to carry on this little Roadrunner and Coyote bit they've been doing, and rams the screwdriver into his spine when he sees an opening, dealing the blow that would turn Johns into an obsessed bounty hunter with a morphine addiction. The legend of Jagger Valance concludes with arguably his most abortive contribution to this heist, as he accidentally shoots his partner. Then, enigmatically, he returns to the world of myth, of folk tale, like so much stardust.
He's got a weapon!
Sometime later, a very irritated Hoxie says he's had it with this master escaper guy, and he's doing literally the only thing he can do. He's sending him to triple max security, where only the most volatile and deplorable inmates are kept. Mass murderers, cannibals, and public speakerphone users. He's induced into a coma and stacked in a sterilized pyramid, revived for 2 minutes a day so he can stumble around and drool, preventing their muscles from atrophying. This idea is almost too creative and darkly comedic for the Riddick-verse, like something out of Demolition Man or Total Recall. You don't get any kind of visual reminder of the world outside, just the words for them, like sunset and tree, so you can fill in the rest and remember one of the better Mountain Goats records. A voice recording tells you what day it is and reminds you that these 2 minutes of exercise are the only right you maintain as a triple max prisoner. And by the way, there is a pending amendment on the law that grants you that right. I'm glad this part is here to drastically wrench the tone in a more classically futuristic, cerebral direction, where the implication is that this sequence, which takes the player under 10 minutes to escape, is actually playing out over like weeks as you're put to sleep and thrown out of your box over and over to work out its vulnerability, which is throwing someone out of their coffin and riding it back to the pyramid before you're tranquilized. In this drugged up, half-awake state, Riddick sees brief glimpses of his future in low-resolution JPEGs of production stills. And I have to imagine, probably came entirely from a note that the game didn't mention Chronicles of Riddick enough. The note was, anytime the Chronicles of Riddick is not on screen, Riddick should be asking, where are the Chronicles? Even from a gameplay perspective, I like this type of thing for Riddick. Just sprinting through the inner workings of a machine that is alien, wrenching a loose pipe free as a weapon, tearing up tiles, crawling through tangled wire tunnels, and bonking little robots that are trying to drag you back to your place in the pile. It makes me repeat my classic refrain that it's a fun enough idea that it could have been the whole idea. But old habits die hard, and this is cut short when Riddick finds an even bigger robot to commandeer. But you know what? When he's happily rubbing his hands together, I'm doing the same. We stomp this death machine in a straight line to Hoxie's office, and you can tell we're getting close when the uniform clinical set dressing gives way to mid-century luxury. Numerous pointless hallways full of crystal chandeliers, velvet curtains, and ornate wooden trim. Something that the devs sort of made up and didn't share with Universal was that, in their vision of this world, wood is the gold of this time period. I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to find much of it in the Riddick-verse, and they figured that must be on purpose. For that reason, they intentionally did not feature anything that seemed organic until you approach the opulent upper quarters of Hoxie's domain. They did wind up having to remove this single line of dialogue referencing this concept, however. In an exchange between two inmates, one talks about a job that would grant them a large sum of money, and the other says something to the effect of, what are you gonna do with all that money? Buy a house made of solid wood? Which, you know, it's like a pity that they couldn't do the thing they wanted to do, but it's also like, is it that great of a joke? I don't know. This may have been an extrapolation of the scene in Pitch Black where they think they've found trees and are excited, but it turns out to be the bones of a creature so massive that they didn't have the money to show it alive. Riddick is chased to the edge of a spaceport with no spaceship and almost gives himself up when Johns swoops down in his ship to pick him up, determined to get a bonus on his bounty that is apparently worth all this. They have a moment to discuss going to a new slam that will hopefully make all this worth it somehow, when Riddick is forced to shove Johns out of the way and take control of the ship, which he promptly steers right into the window of Hoxie's office. And I love that Hoxie has built an incredibly impractical villain's defense system that just shoots him up a slightly fast stair lift into a metal box.
When you make a threat, be prepared to back it up. I'll give you a loan.
Which is then easily bypassed by an explosive. Hoxie recognizes that he's out of fancy gizmos and armies to throw at this guy, and he starts actually groveling in a pouty way, trying to cut a deal. Riddick wants his personal ship, and he's just like, yeah, oh, okay, if that's what you really want, it's just I don't know. When Johns comes to, Riddick has him pull a page from Star Wars, a film which may not exist in this world, and pretend to be a prisoner in transport before they turn the corner and make a break for it. As backup finally arrives, they find Hoxie strapped to a chair with a gun in his hand and Riddick's goggles on his face. It ain't the bullets that gets you, it's the sudden explosion of your vital organs. For sure, a big part of the appeal is the titular Riddick, the Chronicles of. Riddick in this game is not the same Riddick in the film. This guy is a monotone, stoic demon, a cryptid. The kind of guy who would appear from a cloud of Stygian mist after a foolish archaeologist, hoping to advance their standing at the university and finally get published, attempts to wipe a layer of dust from a stone tablet embossed with alien hieroglyphics, and to his surprise, it depresses with a soul-shattering thud. Right? Now, he's that kind of guy. The kind that speaks exclusively to make others piss themselves. He does not talk like a normal guy, even when most of the other characters do, so there is this really amusing contrast, as though we are controlling a monster, and nobody seems to share his parlance or comment on why he can't have a human conversation with me. It's just another barrier he's put up between him and the rest.
Who is it?
Your life or your eyes.
I think if I were writing this game, in this hypothetical you did ask me, out of either lack of imagination or just long-term exposure to video game writing, I would instinctively want to include a character other than Riddick to become invested in. Someone slightly more trustworthy or self-serving than others, a purer soul to be snuffed out, leaving some lasting lesson for our protagonist. The denouement that I've attributed to each film is Riddick learning a little more about himself via the death of anyone that gets close to him. He's shut off from his emotions and can't remember who he was, but every time he opens the door just a little bit, it swings back and hits him in the heart, and he's a little smarter each time. Jagger Valance could have been reworked to this end. Everybody has something to say about this guy, this legend, and then you meet him and he's coughing up blood into a handkerchief, and it doesn't have much utility to Riddick beyond pointing him in the direction of a bomb he can use. The most significant thing he does is accidentally shoot Riddick. I think I'd just shuffle some details around so that maybe Jagger is more sympathetic and maybe he has a more poignant reason for doing whatever terrible crime he's accused of. Downloading cars, perhaps. After retrieving the bomb and arming it through a few conversations, we can learn that he is for sure dying of some respiratory illness he picked up down here in this mine, having brought shades instead of a mask. But he's had time to rehabilitate, even though his sentence is permanent. He has moved on from some youthful crime and wishes to atone in some way. So he's motivated to help Riddick escape Butcher Bay. He's short on time anyway. Maybe he's like, I'll go out in a blaze of glory so you can escape and give this safe deposit key I've been keeping in my ass to my estranged son. I'm kind of just shuffling between tropes. The bomb can only go off with someone there to trigger it. So he stays behind and asks Riddick to give his estranged wife his last will and testament that he's been keeping in his ass. Something's up there! There is a beautiful simplicity to Escape from Butcher Bay's plot that is elevated beyond what is on paper. There are arguably only 3 real characters and one objective that you are always working on. It's more or less a straight line. Well, more like a straight line down and then back up. It's a V. It's a V, but with some serifs. It's a fanciful cursive V. Aside from some slightly strange connective tissue to the second film, there aren't any side plots or fluff around its central mission of getting this guy out of here. It upholds this illusion of the RPG fetch quest, but Riddick would never do anything for someone else if he wasn't benefiting from it or stepping over them to his goal.
It would prove that you are what he told me.
I don't prove anything to anyone.
For sure, other characters think there are plots that include them, but every single one of them, after helping Riddick along, then return to their place on the bench or die suddenly. They interpret his resolve and strength as his capacity for heroics. He's got the look of a savior, a Christ-like figure, but better. Can you imagine how much quicker Jesus would have emerged from that cave if he had a layer of reflective cells behind his retina? Riddick hasn't explored that possibility, that humanity. He's making a beeline to the exit while shoving any neutral figure out of the way. But that's not happening for a lack of ideas or ambition. Starbreeze made it feel like a lot more happened in the story than truly did, and it's because of the richness of its setting. Not a moment goes by that some micro moment or obsessive detail doesn't catch my eye, from the mechanics of a door to the design of a weapon, a bit of dialogue between NPCs, a radio announcement, or guard chatter. There is a whole optional sequence where you can just hang out with them, even though they mostly look to be duplicates of the same character model, and some of them are most assuredly sadistic shitheads that joined to be sadistic shitheads with a badge. Many of them just complain about how miserable Butcher Bay is, and how futile their work is. You can run around their dormitories ringing all their intercoms, and the majority are just like, please, God, no, leave me alone. The turnover rate for prisoners and prison guards has gotta be insane. What is the payoff for abandoning the known universe to live in a company city where all you get to eat is vending machine burger, constantly aware that any day now you could simply slip in a puddle of bodily fluids and careen off a perilous height that had no guardrail in sight? So it never really lets up reminding you of the depressing, soul-destroying routine of Butcher Bay.
4 inmates hang themselves on my watch. Compared to butchers, the end of a rope don't look so bad.
It doesn't abandon its world and drop you in a corridor to shoot guys for longer than like 5 minutes. And even when it does, I lied. It's as a treat, following a stretch of talking to amiable murderers and getting lost in vents. The prospect of writing a story as either a prequel or a sequel to an indie horror film that must tie into that film's big budget action sequel sounds so doomed. I feel like I've heard the story of this game's development a million times, with different names and numbers, and 9 times out of 10, it ends its life as a series of low-resolution screenshots of some alpha that are partially hidden by a dozen different website watermarks. So the very fact that this saw the light of day is kind of astounding. Or the dark of night, rather. You know, Riddick had a pretty inconsistent aversion to light in the films. There's a part in Pitch Black where someone blinds him with a flashlight, and then in the next movie, he takes his goggles off to look at an approaching surface glassing celestial body. The game understood the important part, which is that Riddick works best when he's a little guy, when you can pick him up by the tank top between your thumb and forefinger, and he's like,
"Hey, I'll ghost you, motherfucker."
And you drop him into a complicated escape scenario and watch him survive. I think the only real beat it misses is the benefit of him being part of an ensemble, having a diverse group of personalities to bounce off of, and thankfully that is mostly amended in Assault on Dark Athena, which is functionally just the second chapter of this game anyway, so in that respect, I guess it hardly matters anymore. None of this really matters anymore. Yes, I'm alone, but then again, I always was. All right. You get it. 5 of you get it. My headcanon is that the song only is about Silent Hill 2. But, you know, I say that about a lot of things. The Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay was created in an era where it was docked substantial points for being shorter than other games and not including a multiplayer component. That time has long since passed, and now looking back on its coverage and seeing how often the terms multiplayer and short come up is a bit absurd. Like, why do they keep doing that? They come up with the frequency of a deranged sex scene in a Clive Barker novel. Again? Can't we write about other things? Whoa. Oh shit. Does this one have a movie? Starbreeze was one of a few studios that took the hint and poured all their dwindling power into making an engaging single-player experience and not diverting staff to work on multiplayer shit. If I sound more impassioned about that than necessary, try not having friends. Starbreeze was very thoughtful about how they could heighten the immersion and simulation of being Riddick above all else. The concept of body awareness in gaming was still something of a novelty in 2004. A pleasant surprise waiting at the bottom of your screen, and not like today where I'm hit with a pang of disappointment when I realize that I've taken the form of a free-floating head, undocked from my appendages. You can sort of always get some sense of Riddick's body around you, behind you, in front, locked in a sensuous dance. And not to deprive you of glimpses of his character models, certain actions, like climbing ladders or shimmying across ledges, temporarily switches to a third-person perspective. An effort was made to have the game be completely without a heads-up display. Nothing on the screen but what Riddick sees, with your health being the one exception they couldn't find an elegant solution for. But for most things, it's visual cues. You know you're hidden in the shadows when your vision turns dark blue. You know you have the opportunity for a counterattack when a glint of light flashes on your weapon. But for sure, there is still a lot of guesswork. Things that, after multiple playthroughs, I don't entirely understand. Alright, drop down execution. One swift move, he'll never see it coming. Soon he'll have 230 American pounds of Riddick on his head.
I've got a runner!
Melee combat is a big part of the game, and it remains effectively visceral and intense. When you land a hit, it feels weighted and nasty, and usually leaves a bruise or cut on the actual character model of your enemies. And doubly so if you can land a flurry of left, right hooks, like you've just pulled these poor guys into your zone of destruction. Combat with multiple melee enemies employs a gentleman fighting system, as in only one enemy attacks you at a time, which one could see as an oversight, but it wasn't a thoughtless choice, and plays into a slightly more complex structure, and you can find yourself forgetting that enemies line up to get they bay butchered. As you wail on enemies and they become bruised or bleeding, they will fight more defensively and hang back, while another takes his place. So you're less likely to be overwhelmed, but you may just get worn out and start making mistakes that pile up. I've always loved the fighting ring level because it's not just a sequence of guys that you pummel. They make you go talk to them and get them to agree to the fight. And again, they are characters with names and families and whole lives that you're just mercilessly beating to death. I don't know if it reads this way, but Starbreeze wanted to include the ability to disarm guards with guns because of the scene in Pitch Black when he quickly yoinks Johns' shotgun from him, or Big Gauge, as he called it. And the tutorial for this move is also a shotgun, which for the sake of the example only has one shell in it, so you can force the guy to use it on himself. But this would of course prompt the question, well, why didn't that guy just shoot you with the shotgun he had pointed at you? They decided on having this guy say, "Shit, gun's jammed," right as you're skulking up to him, and that's just the kind of moment-to-moment game dev problem solving that I love learning about. It kind of plays like the light beer alternative of the immersive sim. Not so emergent, compressed in much the same way that Deus Ex Invisible War was, and mostly offers the effective illusion of non-linearity.
Nothing here.
The developer commentary brings up what they felt to be the initial importance of getting stuck, as in seamlessly switching between linear and non-linear gameplay. And only after the game released, they determined that maybe the gamers who would want to play a Riddick game don't want to get stuck, which I instinctively feel is a bit patronizing. But honestly, fair enough. However, that line of thinking was probably more applicable to Xbox gamers from 2004, and not so much from today, when people can be convinced to play a game about power washing Wallace and Gromit's yard. It seems like you have options, and sometimes you do, but the correct path is often the first thing the player will try. Single and double max keeps you in hub areas where you can bounce back and forth between inmates, earning some extra UDs, or weapons, by taking part in a number of optional tasks. As trivial as finding a guy's missing glasses, to severe like wiping out a rival gang. Unfortunately, this mission also shows off how bungled and unintuitive some of these side missions can be. Since you're not enemies with the blueskins, it makes sense that you'd just walk up to this lone one and be like, well, see ya, get wrecked, idiot, moron, fuckhead, and then you'd just go on your merry way thinking you're one step closer to your goal. But I think this actually breaks the mission, because in order to get all the blueskins, you need two guys to spawn who are looking to avenge their buddy. But these guys don't spawn unless he had initiated the fight. So in order to actually complete these, you need to kill the guard harassing him, talk to him, he tells you to get a card off a high-ranking guy in the next room, you go do that, and then suddenly when you get back, the vibe has changed for no reason. Then you can kill him, as though the game didn't approve of you dispatching a hapless super murderer. But of course I then looked this up to confirm that that's how it works, and while some people did agree, there were also a number that were like, I didn't do any of that, I just turned the corner and all three guys were there. So I still just don't know how it works. Cool. There are many optional things to blow money on that you'll often just have wiped from your inventory between levels, or if you get patted down by guards. Things like armor or less homemade weapons like a combat knife, but there does seem to be a lot in place so that you'd never be completely broke. You can borrow money from a dude and never pay him back or play craps, but I wouldn't count that as a viable solution if you're in dire straits. In the developer commentary, they admit that the craps game is kind of busted and rarely amounts to a victory for the sole reason that the Swedes programming it had never played craps and thus did not have a great grasp on its rules or odds.
You lose, man!
Maybe it's me using gatekeeping logic when I say the game doesn't have emergent gameplay, which I admit I sometimes confuse with can I move a small, medium, and large box around, but an experience I have fond memories of was spending hours just kind of dicking around in the hub areas, trying to break its rules and accomplish dumb shit without getting tagged by security. I would invent little goals to extend the experience, like see how many non-essential NPCs I could get away with killing by luring out of frame of the cameras. I was tapping in to the mid-2000s gamer toxicity within me, the desire to break stuff, destroy something beautiful, watch everything on the Fight Club special features disc. Starbreeze knew about this darkness inherent in the gamer. That's why they went out of their way to record an appropriate reaction to you buying a taser and immediately using it on its former owner.
I knew you would do.
They just knew what we carry within us, this curse we live with, if you can call it life. Hang on, my mommy's calling me. You'll have areas that you can choose to stealthily navigate or blast your way through, but this has no significant bearing on the course of the game. The level offering the most substantial differences being Pigsville, which you could casually stroll through to your objective, tipping your cap to the guards like you own the place, or initiate a firefight, or turn off the lights and hunt everyone down, or my favorite psycho shit method, where I dress like a guard but still slowly pick off each of them anytime someone rounds a corner. Go to sleep! For no reason, because it's exhilarating. The fear of getting caught, knowing it benefits me in no way, and doesn't affect anything? But really, the game's willingness to treat even its potential cannon fodder as real guys that are just trying to get through the day on shitfuck planet is wonderful. Like, nobody wants to be here, and just the fact that I can feel that is very rare in any video game. It strikes a moment of hesitation when, before I shoot a guy, a prompt comes up and says, oh, by the way, this guy's name is Soup. Part of me wishes we got more of this. I'd love an extended B-plot where Riddick has to come up with this elaborate cover to remain embedded in the mercs. But he keeps getting more and more invested, gaining friends, lovers perhaps. Just working the grind, finding some fulfilling mediocrity that he didn't know he needed. Structure, routine, and then one day someone says,
"Hey, it's that freaking Kong!"
This may be colored by the fact that I've been playing the game RoboCop Rogue City in my spare hour of the day, and it feels like a lost Starbreeze title from the mid-aughts. It's incredibly solid and enjoyable if you were into Escape from Butcher Bay and the darkness, and I love any opportunity to take a somewhat absurd, heightened character and force them into these comedically mundane circumstances. There is a whole mission where RoboCop has to go around getting his coworkers to sign a get well soon card.
I'm collecting signatures on a get well card for Lewis.
I love shit like that. There's just been a hole in my heart for like a really good AA kind of Xbox 360 era game. Yeah, it's a little brain off. It's a little I don't see it mentioned anywhere, but something the remake substantially improves from the 2004 version is firing a gun from cover. You can now aim your gun overhead or around corners and minimize your exposure, and Riddick's arms will sort of automatically get in position for that fluidly when you're pressed against cover. In the original, attempting to do this would cause Riddick to do a big step, like he dropped into a split, and it requires some adjustment to find the right spot. You could also end up performing a roll, a maneuver I not once found a suitable use for. I'm honestly not sure if you can still do that in the remake or if they removed it, but I couldn't find the key for it, and frankly, I don't want to. Even with these improvements, did I still find myself utterly confused by the AI's alternating blindness and omniscience? Sure, skill can only get you so far. At the end of the day, you are at the mercy of the machine.
Okay, I have him now! Hey, prisoner! Come on, show yourself!
Something's go.
Clunkiness aside, gunfights still feel pretty good. The weapons have impact and force to them, sending guards ragdolling into the dark, painting walls with blood, and bullet holes slowly fading with a red molten light. This only really applies to the rifle, which is the most common weapon. For some reason, I was all set to start heaping praise onto this game's shotgun, but then I remembered that outside of the 2 scenes where it's your only option against non-human enemies, I never used it. So I opened the game again and tried using it against guards, and it is surprisingly useless. Like, I may as well be throwing a handful of fucking Orbeez at them. The aptly named gun is, funnily enough, the only gun in the game that works like a normal gun, as in you aim somewhere, pull the trigger, and the bullet goes where you were aiming it. But it causes very little kinetic spectacle. It's kind of just an off button for your foes. One of the harder to ignore leftovers from the Chronicles of Riddick's time as Pitch Black are the collectible cigarette packs hidden throughout the game, each sporting some pretty funny and well-designed packaging. Just as an idea, this is like a really cool art project. It's a well-established trope that in prisons, cigarettes functioned as smokable currency. Life tropes, if you will. So it was actually quite clever to implement that into the game, allow you to trade smokes for shivs and vent tools. Riddick himself references this economy in the film that was once the game's namesake. For whatever reason, they backed out of this plan and replaced the purpose of cigarettes with UDs, last minute, universal dollars, Vivendi bucks if you like. And the cigarettes, which were relegated to unlocking concept art and various behind-the-scenes media, were meant to be hidden in various places throughout the game, but they were at one time a thing you were supposed to find easily. And someone didn't get the memo that these needed to be hidden, so sometimes they're hidden and sometimes they're just like the first thing you would see when you enter a room. It could have been a note from VUG, or it could be that during this game's production, the US was actively banning cigarettes from all prisons, so maybe it would have seemed anachronistic for this to still be the norm in the distant future. Of course, everyone does still smoke in the game.
Leave me alone!
I remember in the lead up to the release of Assault on Dark Athena and the remake of Escape from Butcher Bay, the consensus on forums and comment sections of gaming publications was that, well, obviously the way they will improve the original is by removing the load screens between areas, to be able to walk from section to section without pause, which just illustrates how sudden and deflating the loading screens were. You're all pumped up to jump in the next room and crouch like a fucking rat! But suddenly, I gotta listen to my Xbox mimic the sound of a gas-powered generator for 2 minutes, exhaust venting out of its sides, making my room smell like burnt plastic, making me see a vibrating pattern of red and black spots. Without question, the Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay Developer's Cut was one of the most impressive looking games many had ever seen, and certainly on a console. For a very brief window, it seemed to represent the height of a certain look and place in graphic tech, making heavy use of normal mapping and stencil shadows, offering uniquely dramatic lighting. More astounding because it was an engine made up for this game from a developer that was far from a gamer household name, and yet still rivaled and arguably exceeded the capabilities of the other benchmark game of the era, Doom 3, leading many to just assume it was some kind of fork of its engine. Well, to clarify, I think this is mostly in reference to the developer cut, which is, in my opinion, the best looking version of the game, but not the best functioning, and it's actually quite difficult to get running properly on modern machines. The trade-off being that it is abandonware, so you don't have to break the bank to tinker around with it.
You just walked into the...
The developer's cut has more vibrant colors and chunkier, more raw character models and textures. Less expressive and realistic for sure, but realism hasn't ever really been at the forefront of my artistic appetite. The remake has a more muted color grading and shallow depth of field to look more cinematic, which I don't so much find successful as I find it to just look like it swapped the default art style from the 2000s to the 2010s. The old characters have these chubby baby faces that are so much more charming to me. I love being able to tell which member of the dev team I'm killing. I'll never be okay killing Jens Matthews though. Even though he always runs out of the shadow, shiv in hand, it feels like a crime to kill a man with such immaculate vibes. So long, sweet prince. Wherever you're going, I hope you have complete access to the entire Tool discography, except for Fear Inoculum.
The person that you have probably killed, which is right next to you now, is actually me. The head is based on my head. Of course, the body is not, because in general, all of these bodies are way more muscular than what is actually the case of our malnourished Swedish developer bodies.
The dev team would express remorse for the design of the guns and say that they fell victim to an increasingly brutal crunch that had their redesign fall between the cracks. I, however, think they are great and perfectly reflective of 90s sci-fi tech design. Just big fucking slabs of metal with dramatic angles, useless greeblies. There is nothing ergonomic or cost-effective about them. One of my favorite details is how the shotgun is loaded by expelling a magazine forward, which has no useful application and is probably just annoying when you're at the range and your mag just springs out like a shuriken, nails someone in the Bass Pro Shop hat. But fuck, does it look and sound so cool. Another choice I found amusing was the riot guards don't have proprietary turrets, but 3 assault rifles just inserted into its arms, being fed by like a belt presumably, and I imagine that was completely a decision for economic reasons, but it makes absolute sense in this world that is a clashing of high tech and low effort. I love how filthy and industrial a place Butcher Bay is.
Any crabs? No.
The engine is making an abundance of metal grating and stippled tiling sing. It feels oppressive and soul-sucking. Nothing is comfortable or inviting in any sense. I don't even remember seeing a chair in this whole fucking game. Cots are just flat, uncushioned, recessed pedestals. They resemble a bed in so much that they are horizontal. And that's it! The only times I think the design of environments falters is when you come across a stack of space crates, which I, the gamer, know without ever thinking, is an invitation to climb. They aren't there for no reason, but within the game world they are. I will admit, they clearly did a lot of work to distract you from the fact that these are just copy-pasted blocks to guide you into the next area. The cryosleep area offers this beautiful break from the monotony of steel and concrete to the monotony of sterile and white plastics. I've always liked how surgical and unsettling it was, almost making me long for my piss-stained cell. The look and feel of this area was inspired by a music video that Chris Cunningham directed for Bjork's song All Is Full of Love, which was a crazy confluence of shared interest because during my film head arc, I was way into Cunningham stuff, and I still have the DVD of his work, which is one of few DVDs I have refused to sell for rent money. Perhaps it's because I was so enamored by the look of this game, eating up the drip feed of screen caps, that it was one of the first games that I really started to appreciate motion capture acting. Both games feature incredibly expressive and subtle performances that move so fluidly. During the opening walk to Riddick's cell, there's a guard just standing idly that tosses his rifle from one hand to the other, and another that just kind of shifts uncomfortably in his armor. Knowing nothing about games, I knew little considerate flourishes like that were probably a lot of work. All of Riddick's animations perfectly capture his skulking, muscular ghoul physique, which despite having access to the guy were not done by Vin Diesel, but by someone else, someone who was grievously injured performing this dramatic leap we see twice. He landed with his leg between 2 gymnastic mats and just sort of crunched into concrete. That is the take you see in the game, sans clumsy landing. Riddick's eye shine ability was another source of frustration, as we see him use it a fair deal in Pitch Black, and it has a very distinct, almost thermal camera look to it. So originally they modeled the effect to look as similar to its film counterpart as possible, but the result would often give playtesters motion sickness, and Universal didn't like that this would separate the look of the game from the upcoming movie, so they sunk a lot of time trying to fine-tune what Riddick's ability even looks like, settling on a slightly doubled, purple-tinted infrared sort of look that ultimately didn't matter because the Chronicles of Riddick had like maybe 2 scenes, maybe 1, where we see from Riddick's perspective, and it doesn't look like either interpretation really. It would be a disservice to discuss the game's visuals without mentioning the most pointlessly fascinating menu system maybe ever, where every bit of text is manically assembled on a giant 3-dimensional cube grid, a 20 by 20 Rubik's Cube made of presumably metal. It's a brilliant example of what you can cook up when you overthink and overdesign something that it could have easily just been a series of static windows. It seems like an intentionally flagrant use of company resources, but it's mesmerizing, and I felt immense joy hearing someone comment in any way on the particulars of its sound, that clinking, scraping metal sound, which was apparently captured by recording a choir of Zippo lighters and bells played in reverse. For whatever reason, learning that made me smile and nod in the cold glow of my monitor and utter, I thought it might be something like that. Voice acting is consistently top-notch and split between traditional voice actors and screen actors. Aside from Riddick, who growls every line, no matter how mundane, as though it could be said to preclude being strangled with a chain, something I found really considerate that I wish carried over to the rest of the game is that it opens with a dream sequence tutorial level, and for the length of it, Riddick talks to himself about what he should do.
Darkness. I can hide the bodies here.
And not to say that I'd want him to be a perpetual hint system, it was just nice hearing him chime in every now and then. And frankly, it's odd that he has nothing to say about any of the weird shit I make him do.
Hey, come talk to me.
No. Oops. Talk.
You're Riddick, right? Well, there's a guy named Madsen talking like he knows you. He's in the courtyard just by the pit.
It should not feel like it was something that was communicated directly to you as a player, but instead it was his mind going on about the situation, about the environments or whatever.
I mean, this might just be the long way of saying that he's got a really sick voice. The successor to Starbreeze, Machine Games, would revisit this sort of monologuing in their reboot of the Wolfenstein series to great effect.
To commission a portrait in service of your ego, General. You waste your pick.
Cole Hauser plays Johns perfectly. Even without visual aid, you can sense that he's just kind of a spineless prick, and just like in Pitch Black, they play off each other really well, stuck in a murky space between workplace acquaintance and mortal enemies.
How long you been here?
Long enough.
Doing the heavy lifting of Various is John DiMaggio and Michael Rooker, who have very distinct and enjoyable voices that are, by some twist of fate, coming out of multiple guys all over this planet.
Leave me alone, I'm on duty. I've got a hellish shift, 60 hours, in the bunker. Hey. Go away.
I don't know if it's so much a case of, well, we have them, as it is a case of them not being able to afford any more recognizable character actors to play Prison Guard 6.
I said drill, fucker!
Everyone speaks in a particular, memorable way, so it's noticeable when even the smallest of lines are re-recorded for the remake.
What did you do?
Just made your... Just fix your arm. Please.
What did you do?
Just made your... Just fix your arm. Please.
You think I'd forget fix your arm? Not this guy. I don't forget anything. Or is it that I don't forgive anything? I don't know, maybe it's both. The music is composed by Gustav Grefberg, who did pretty much all of Starbreeze's music up until the great exodus around 2012's Syndicate. His score for Riddick is occasionally quite grand, cinematic. Action sequences play out with tribalistic drumming punctuated by horn stabs. Stealth sequences take the same concepts and melodies and drop the intensity, saying the same thing but subdued, creating fitting accompaniment to watching a predatory animal stalk its prey. Interestingly, for this game, Grefberg created what he called an ongoing song for each area that doesn't have any kind of beginning or end to it. It's all middle, which is often the best part of the song, right? That part where it's peaking, and it could last forever. You don't know. I don't know how common practice this is with games outside of, something where music is a crucial component meant to dynamically follow you, like the modern Doom series. At least before they kicked out the guy that made those good. Because it seems like a lot of extra science bullshit when you could just do a really sick, 3 to 5 minute track and, just pray the player doesn't get lost. But the idea was the songs just keep going. They are seamless loops in a constant crescendo that is technically playing all the time over 3 different versions of itself for fighting, sneaking, and exploring. And as the gameplay shifts, one version fades out beneath another. The centerpiece track is this Hollywood epic action movie track with a bombastic, almost Pirates of the Caribbean adjacent melody. And I don't feel the best fit for the tone of the game. But at the same time, I get that stuck in my head a lot. Even when I speak ill of it. I'm like, man, this sucks. What is this Hans Zimmer bullshit? Oh, okay. Alright. Okay. Game. I love the Riddick movies, and so does my young son. The language is a little dicey sometimes, but my son is pretty responsible and knows not to emulate it, particularly around other kids or at school or in public, etc. I'm super proud of him. That's why I let him watch things like these movies sometimes. Riddick is pretty much of a good guy. After checking the game out for a minute or two before I could get upstairs to join him, he told me that he thought the bad language was a bit overused, way more than represented in the movies. Unfortunately, he was right. It's in the top of the closet now, but I'm sure it's a great game. We both sad. We were really psyched to get it. I really like the Riddick character and the movies, and Vin Diesel even, but this game has too much unnecessary foul language in it, even for me. And after all, the games, for the most part, are supposed to be for kids, right? With that in mind, I'd skip this one. Maybe the next one will have better game, and not have to be constantly dropping the F-bomb all over the effing place. Sorry. So your child is mature enough not to emulate the language in a piece of media and to come to you willingly, saying, "Look, Papa, I shouldn't be playing this." There's this real quaint inconsistency with your parenting, like he's doing a better job staying abreast of appropriate content than you. You've hyped your son up about a video game and then locked it away to the dreaded top of the closet, but the onus was on you to determine if it was appropriate for him or not. You're aware games have the capacity to include such things as foul language, but in 2007 no less, still seem to be operating under the impression that video games are even mostly for children, when it was more like they were mostly for adults with the mind of a child and the body of a spider. Even the ones marked as being for mature audiences and based on R-rated films you've seen. You know Riddick's a murderer, right?
Okay. Close the game.
You know what I find most uncomfortable about you, Riddick?
First-person shooter. Not that great, but not the worst. Mostly first-person shooter and some Doom-style gameplay, and the Suffering-style prison escape, except less scary. But the graphics are better, but difficult to see clearly all the time. Worst part, Riddick does do very much stuff other than hitting and see in the dark, but you might like it. It's still fun to shoot stuff. I love the contortionism on display in saying, the Suffering-style prison escape, except less scary. If you've played The Suffering, it's a lot like that, except it's a completely different genre, tone, theme, gameplay, perspective, time period, visual style. Reach elsewhere. Consume more media, I guess. I think this is less a case of Riddick not doing cool stuff, but you being unwilling to put yourself mentally in his place, to use him as an avatar. You're given an opportunity to puppet around Vin Diesel and make him snap people's necks and mumble threats, and this doesn't fill you with an immersive joy. I mean, spoilers? The guy escaped from prison. That's at least impressive, right? 3 stars. Don't know. The boy played it. If you didn't play it, with what criterion are you giving it 3 stars? Also, do you think I know who that is? Hype alert. This game seems to be getting the full treatment from the shadow marketing crew. Be careful about what reviews you put any trust in. The game is okay as a console port. It is not much of a game from PC standards. Good graphics do not make a game. It is also very short. 1 day short. If you really love Vin Diesel and Riddick, then you will want this, but otherwise it is not that great. I have to believe any many of the overly enthusiastic reviews are company plants. The reviews in the major magazines are also overly optimistic. I had minor crashes, and the save game system is somewhat console-ish. Be wary of the other reviews. You know, you hope someone like this moved on from this type of conspiratorial thinking, that they don't spend their days imagining some shadowy cabal of game marketers that are going around rewriting history. Does that in some sense happen? I guess, but that would only be an issue if I was incapable of forming my own opinion. I mean, if that were the case, they did kind of a shitty job. The game wasn't successful. It's almost like it appealed to a niche but passionate audience or something. And the two examples you cite of proof that the game is overhyped are the most benign micromanaging nitpicks that wouldn't move the needle for anyone. Oh no, the save system is somewhat console-ish, whatever the fuck that means. Gamers really have been this bored forever, huh? Dreaming up boogeymen that keep ruining games by making some games not directly targeting my interests, hobbies, or life experiences. Sounds like a lot of energy that would be better spent just playing video games. Those things people claim to like. It has been said, by me right now, that the Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay is a game that has no right to be as good as it is. But I'd go one further and say it's a game that has no right to exist. It's like that crying boy painting that survives house fires. Even though it's found more of an audience in recent years, and it's had a few chances to reach a wider one, I don't know if it's right to say that it had a fair shake. It was a crunch-fueled development in a studio caving in on itself, having to clear every creative decision with a Hollywood studio that seemed allergic to fun, released to positive critic reviews but dismal sales, and getting a second shot 5 years later in a vastly different world, a world besieged by Minecraft, Modern Warfare, and Plants vs. Zombies that was maybe even less receptive to an experimental single-player Vin Diesel-powered vehicle. And for sure, it's a tough sell. The oversaturation of Vin Diesel certainly hasn't helped gamers with glazed-over eyes be intrigued by the concept. All this only to have its fate be a Steam version with inexcusable DRM, which was eventually removed, but then so too was the entire game. Kind of a baby with the bathwater scenario, continuing a theme of mistreatment for the little game that could not win. At the time of my writing this, the Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay and Assault on Dark Athena are currently abandonware, mysteriously pulled from sale even at GOG. So unless you're watching this from a near future in which Night Dive produced a quality re-release, this is the world we have and probably deserve. And if you are from the future and you're listening to this, then you're too late. I've activated the device. It truly felt like it came from nowhere and looked, sounded, and played better than many of its contemporaries. In a year packed with wall-to-wall great releases. No offense to the studio's previous work, but there is little in Enclave that told me that they had this in them. During the press tour for Assault on Dark Athena, then CEO of Starbreeze, Johan Christensen, was asked why Riddick bucked the trend of movie tie-in games being near universally garbage, and he basically says he has no idea. Because at the end of the day, they faced the two dragons of movie tie-in game failure. There was an extraordinary time constraint, and it was hell getting anything approved with the license holder. Its cycle was consistently just as shitty as it probably was for other studios.
It was pretty much a mess during the whole Riddick Butcher Bay production as well with those things. So I'm not quite sure actually why it did work out in the end. I mean, it's a struggle every day to make a good game, and it was exactly the same during that production.
But they were emboldened by the ability to create in a space that didn't hugely conflict with the film it was tying into. And also, if they didn't ship this game, there was nothing else on the rollers. It was all in on Riddick or all in on mass tweeting your resume. These are the terms that float about in my mind soup when I think about this game. Words like anomaly, fluke. That's actually the sound that happens in my head when I'm playing RoboCop. Words like anomaly, fluke, fortuitous consequence. It still does something for me after all this time. Probes some strange nerve ending that's set at an angle, accessible only by Riddick. It's a terrible game for me to produce content out of because of the draw to keep playing it. All too often I'd reopen the game to capture some hyper-specific micro thing, and then once I had it, I'd think, well, I might as well finish up this area. If you're willing to dig Riddick out from whatever Walmart store shelf you can find it in, you'll find a still solid game that wasn't content being a beat-by-beat retread of arguably the worst yet most significant piece of Riddick media. It has this noticeable independent spirit that is rebelling against the strict boundaries of its licensing at every turn, while cleverly shining a light on the parts of specifically Pitch Black that worked. A resourceful, badass lead character that gives a small glimpse of an unknowably larger world. It really helps that much of the groundwork was laid when they were trying to make a Pitch Black game. Is it short? Yes. Is that the worst thing in the world? Yes. I wish it was longer as well, but the trade-off is that you get a collection of areas that are meticulously plotted. There's a lot of intention with the positioning and placement of everything. I think I'd take, bespoke, handcrafted rooms in place of vast, unlived-in cities every time. I can't recall an area that felt squandered. Even when something was probably made with the intention of being filler, it never feels like it's out of sync with the world they created. It's always putting you in the path of something odd or funny or dark, such that I actually seek out its secondary content, and there is no map cluttered with waypoints to direct me there. Riddick, the character, may choose to word things in a dismissive, devil-may-care manner, but inside, I'm just walking back and forth grimy stone halls, scratching a red welt on my arm, asking, is there anything you need me to do? I'll do pretty much anything. Just let me stay here. Don't make me go. I got nothing out there.
Hey, prisoner. Show yourself!
When somebody come in at you and attack you, you just give up. This is a whipping. This is what's gonna hurt you. When somebody point a gun at you, you might as well think you're dead, because you're really not gonna do anything.
The Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay was always meant as the one for them, so that Starbreeze could have enough security doing the one for us. So they had collected a few ideas for original IP, signing a contract with VUG that they get to make 2 of theirs if the third is a remake of Escape from Butcher Bay for the new generation of consoles. 3 years later, in 2007, Vivendi and Tygon first started teasing Assault on Dark Athena as a remaster of Butcher Bay with a new level to be published by Sierra Entertainment. The plan was always for it to be a version 1.5 and not a full sequel, but according to an interview with Jens Anderson and OneUp.com, they had to fight tooth and nail to convince VUG not to name the game The Chronicles of Riddick 2, which any idiot off the street could understand why. The only thing it would do is foster disappointment, not unlike several of the Puppet Master sequels that just have a new character remembering one of the better movies, and that's the whole movie. Using the advancements their engine had made during the development of The Darkness, Starbreeze went back in and attempted to fix or improve every part of Butcher Bay that wouldn't break it, and wrote a new, equally brief continuation for the Eternal Road story of Riddick, cruelly mirroring the first time they worked on this game. In 2008, Vivendi merged with Activision to create many lawsuits. Activision Blizzard. Since Activision Blizzard is in the business of dream killing, the first order of business was to shut down Sierra Entertainment and thus cancel the publishing of many of its upcoming titles deemed non-strategic. This put the future of Assault on Dark Athena, which had already missed its release window, as well as other games like Brutal Legend, Ghostbusters, and Wet, in limbo. But once again, Starbreeze just kept their nose to the grindstone and produced enough content to market Dark Athena as a full sequel, including that multiplayer component that so many seem to imagine as a worthwhile endeavor in this narrative-heavy stealth game. Thanks to a vocal cult following making their disappointment known and Atari stepping up, it was given a further 9 months to cook and was published in April of 2009. On release, The Chronicles of Riddick Assault on Dark Athena was met with a lot of the same praise as the first time, but with some added baggage along with it. Game Informer's May issue would name it Game of the Month and open with, "Many of the gamers I talked to have never played the original Xbox title that anchors this value-packed release. With Dark Athena releasing on all high-powered consoles, there is absolutely no excuse not to play this incredible game." However, this time around, the landscape of games was undergoing a change. A new console generation had dawned, and other games like Xenoclash had improved on first-person melee fighting. Adding to this was an awkwardness around the second half of Dark Athena's campaign. OneUp.com would give it a B-, and continue to heap praise onto Butcher Bay, feeling that its inclusion only highlights the scattershot design of Dark Athena, concluding with, "The unsatisfying Dark Athena should be played as a curiosity, and then put back where it belongs." in Butcher Bay's shadow. In 2010, Starbreeze partnered with the other gaming old god, EA, and within that partnership developed the game Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, from a pitch by creator Joseph Ferris. Trouble began to arise with the announcement of their next titles. The first meant to give the Jason Bourne franchise the same treatment that Riddick and the Darkness received. The request was, do one of those for Matt Damon. But once Matt Damon and director Paul Greengrass pulled out of the fourth movie, EA maybe correctly determined that Jeremy Renner didn't have the same pull. The one that did eventually flop out of Starbreeze's bloated corpse was a reimagining of the Syndicate franchise. The development for this game was fraught with difficulty, and the staff at Starbreeze simply did not get along with EA. As a result, many key figures at Starbreeze, including its founder, Magnus Hugdahl, left to start Machine Games. This was a big deal because though his name doesn't carry the same cash as other famous game devs, he was sort of their keystone, having created the technology that allowed for Riddick and the Darkness, and made a series of clever business decisions that kept pulling Starbreeze away from the brink. Unlike other game industry breakups, there wasn't a web of paperwork and red tape wedging the two apart. Most of the staff just said fuck this and left, an exodus that would continue to trickle over to Machine Games. In 2013, with the third Riddick film on the horizon, Vin Diesel would make a bizarre announcement during Comic-Con that he was reassembling Tygon and getting the old Starbreeze boys back together to create the third Riddick game. One last ride!
For all the game lovers, we're reassembling the team that made Escape from Butcher Bay.
When pressed for details, he describes the game as an MMO about the Merc trade. There has been no word of this game since, presumably after he called up Starbreeze and heard,
"The number you dialed is not in service."
It was kind of interesting seeing critics try to surgically remove the Assault on Dark Athena campaign from this package and criticize it as a standalone product, which I guess you could do, but with Butcher Bay remade, this new storyline feels so much like a follow-up episode, like the next thing that happened the next day, that it felt somewhat arbitrary to say, this one is not as good as that first one. The whole thing has been smeared into a sepia-toned motion blur. Not to sound reductive, because I will say, Dark Athena attempts things with its plot that are clearly informed by reactions or reflections on Butcher Bay, and meant to elevate its storytelling, or at the very least make it more adult, or at the very least say fucking shit more.
I'm fucking tired of you motherfuckers! You motherfuckers aren't telling me anything!
Maybe Dogzilla was right. Assault on Dark Athena begins some moments after Riddick and John's escape in Hoxie's ship. The two are in cryosleep, making their way across the galaxy to the next prison down the lane. Riddick, curiously not in any kind of restraints or bondage, as was the case in Pitch Black. I think he had expressed enough good behavior that Johns dropped the facade that he could ever control this guy, even with chains. As the ship drifts through an asteroid field, Riddick wakes up and notices a massive, eerie-looking ship that is the story's namesake. Yes, the Assault on Dark Athena. That's headed straight for them. And in a visual not dissimilar to Dark Fury, it fires a rocket-propelled tow cable and sucks them in. Even if you played Butcher Bay directly before this, you might be left scratching your head because, in an odd but I suppose welcome turn, they immediately start referencing a lot of deep Riddick lore, galaxy names, old factions, history involving these characters that dates back to a Chronicles of Riddick promotional FMV point-and-click game called Hunt for Riddick, which is from the perspective of a merc that Toombs has deputized in order to collect information on Riddick's whereabouts.
Alright, here's the deal. I need you to go on an old-fashioned smash and grab. His name? Richard B. Riddick, master of murder and mayhem.
It never ceases to amaze me how much Riddick content was created and how many people were completely game to do something like this. The fact that Judi Dench was like down to be in a game tantamount to the seventh guest is not talked about enough. This may actually be some faint echo of a Pitch Black prequel film that never was. Screenwriter Solid Snake, he goes by other names, but we all know what I mean, wrote a script for a deep lore prequel that would explore Riddick and Johns' history as former army buddies, whose relationship sours during a war against a planet of ghosts. Does nobody have like a small idea for this series? What is it about Riddick that makes people think, okay, so we open on a battle between demons and space pirates as a moon is crashing into the planet. Like, do you actually want to make a movie? The Dark Athena is captained by a psychotic and vengeful merc named Gale Revis, who knows both with our guys, mentioning that Johns used to be a good man, a squad leader in some war that is now irrelevant, but he's since lost his way. Riddick, hidden in the rafters of the ship, alludes to past differences with Revis, and seems to immediately understand the threat she poses, so he spends the majority of the time on the ship crawling around vents and slinking around shadowed catwalks, picking off guards and collecting intel, which is, I'd say, the sole reason that the first half of this game is stronger than the second. In one of many ventilation shafts, Riddick meets a little girl named Lynn and talks to her the normal way you would address a strange child.
Now the monsters have something to fear.
She claims to be hiding from the monsters and begs for help because they're going to turn her mother into a monster as well. These monsters are actually hollowed out dead bodies fitted with machine parts, set on scripted patrols, but once alerted can be piloted as drones by an operator somewhere else on the ship. Revis, her second in command, Spinner, and the rest of her merc crew have taken to abducting nobodies throughout the galaxy and converting them into cyborg slaves. Revis suspects Riddick's presence on the ship, but is more interested in the prospect of turning Johns over to the authorities now that he's racked up his own bounty. Can I just say, I love a future where we still have flip phones. Hanging up while you're pissed off has never hit the same, and even our attempts to tap into that nostalgia are hollow. Because modern flip phones, like, you can still do that, but then you immediately have to open it up to be like, oh fuck, I didn't break one of these fragile little screens, did I? While Riddick eavesdrops on this conversation, he notices a guard walking by with a pair of ulaks, and he eyeballs them like, ooh, I gotta get me some of those. I didn't know they had a Dead Mall gift shop out here. This is neat to me because it's a conscious reference to specific events in Chronicles of Riddick, because he also gets a pair in that movie. Butcher Bay was released in tandem with that movie, and I don't think they ever got like a screening or something, so this is them getting the opportunity to add more threads between the two pieces, and also a chance to make good on their cover art. If you'll notice, the cover art for Butcher Bay features Riddick with two big fucking knives at his chest. You never get those blades, but this time you can put Riddick on the cover with two ulaks, and within the first 10 minutes, have them waltz right into your life, and see that they are just as goofy and impractical looking close up. There is only one area in Assault on Dark Athena that plays like the RPG hub areas of Butcher Bay, a cell block of kidnapped weirdos awaiting strogification. Riddick can gather clues about Revis and the Athena while performing some smaller tasks for them in preparation for a breakout. There is the implication that after escaping Butcher Bay, Riddick has gained a bit more celebrity. One of the prisoners, Bonner, recognizes him and sort of fanboys at the prospect of escaping the ship together. Docker, Silverman, and her daughter Lynn were captured on a transport ship bringing a group of travelers from one colony to another. He's a former Marine that was brought to protect the ship from pirates, not mercs. He spells out that these are clearly renegades of some sort, that have no interest in the merc union or its guidelines. Hard to believe that any merc ever depicted in this franchise was keeping some kind of code of conduct in mind in their pursuit of Riddick. That was them following the rules? He's the only character that is not put off by the weird shit he's always saying.
You understand? I just want to know that my Lynn is all right.
The dark protects her.
The fuck does that mean? If you would like to experience the plot of this game on your own and not have it spoiled for you, feel free to skip to this time, where I will conclude my thoughts in a roundabout way. But if you're in this deep, like, I don't see how you'd avoid spoilers, or how I'd avoid saying them at this point. Like, we're talking about a sequel, essentially. So you may as well just watch the whole video, and then maybe a couple more. Maybe leave a comment and subscribe and join Patreon.
Day 3 on Prison Planet. Traded my walking stick for a pack of smokes. Got hungry, ate the smokes. Have I made mistakes? Sure. Throwing up all those smokes for one. I have to be stronger if I am to survive. What's this? Fresh butts and fresh hope.
I've been talking for 4.5 hours. My voice is just hanging on by a thread. Silverman is an engineer and can help Riddick get into different, new, more exciting ventilation shafts, if he can collect some parts that a character, Jailer, might be able to lead him to. He's a former merc that was stripped of his rank and thrown in with the rest of the prisoners. He reveals that Revis is the ultimate badass, grew up in some planetary slum, and actually led a mutiny of sorts and locked up the old captain, played seemingly by Joe Biden. The character of Jailer is really intense and presents the most adult aspect of this game. I've done a lot of thinking about what made them want this guy here, this completely repellent lunatic that frequently alludes to partaking in acts of sexual violence and regular violence, and seems like he is just cracked out, full of so much testosterone-fueled violence that steam is going to start pouring out of him. He is truly a tactless evil.
I don't rile people. I kill them.
You're just a Riddick.
And I started to think that maybe it was just to make apparent a danger or unease that was sort of absent in Butcher Bay. I mean, that game took place in a triple max space prison, and now that I think about it, were any of the inmates actually like scary, threatening, or seemed like an irredeemably lost soul? Most of the guys you came across, even the ones running at you with shiv in hand, shouting canned expletives, were either just assholes or wanted to be left alone. But this guy is clearly a monster. The worst, most cruel guys in Butcher Bay you never even see because they're in constant lockdown. They tee up the two most notorious killers and you don't even get a chance to shank them repeatedly, repeating "don't fuck with me" in a droning loop. Nobody in Butcher Bay references or implies sexual assault, even though it was the mid-aughts and it was not uncommon for that to appear in media as a joke. There was a long time where that was just the prison joke, and I don't think there's a single line of dialogue that alludes to that sort of thing at all. And maybe that's showing the maturity of Starbreeze or the unwillingness of Universal to let them include something that might cost them money or skirt an A rating. Either way, they must have been saving all that stuff for this one. Whatever the reason for including this guy, he fucking sucks, and I immediately wanted him dead. So if that was the goal, bravo. Now that I've showered and scrubbed with steel wool, I take it all back. Big Dog, or whatever your name was, he was right to put this game on top of the closet. There are a few streams of obscenities that are like, what were you trying to meet a quota? I get it. People are under a lot of stress. You know, Bonner being here represents a huge, earth-shaking plot hole. This guy would only know the shit he knows about my exploits and misadventures if he was at Butcher Bay at the same time as me. Me, the only guy that ever escaped from Butcher Bay? Like, what evidence was there that he ever even had a cell in Butcher's? Bonner was here. Huh. Wonder who that is. Maybe we'll cross paths someday, you never know. Oh, I guess I remember that. Alright, well, how did he manage to escape from the... Looks like Bonner submitted a petition for release to Hoxie and it was approved. I didn't know you could just do that. Maybe I've been going about this all wrong. If I keep looking for shortcuts out of my mistakes, have I really learned from them? Alright. Well, it seems you've thought of everything. Look, I was just being an asshole. It was completely unnecessary to go back into an old game while the hood was still up and gaslight me with new lore. I'm not gonna seek out supporting information about Bonner. Like, I don't know, some guys just wind up places. Doesn't have to be that deep. The escape plan starts coming together with the help of the prisoners. Jailer provides access to tools, which Silverman can craft into a vent tool, and Dacker can help hack into the ship and open a way to the Athena's ships. Stuck fast to the sides of a metal cylinder by the force of sheer masculinity, we eavesdrop on some guards and learn that the Dark Athena is preparing to land and invade a colony city named New Venice for the purposes of replacing all the drones we killed.
I'm telling you, it was the most vivid dream I've ever had.
Sounds nuts, man.
Right? And I've never even seen one of his movies, and there he was, dropping from the rafters with a knife.
Hey, maybe he's up there right now.
Don't joke like that, asshole. I told you this shit in confidence.
What's the joke? I think Vin Diesel himself is probably perched above us.
Stop,
just
dude.
waiting for the perfect moment to drop down. And
I'm gonna tell the boss.
To drop down and kill.
Tell me how to open the cells.
Hang on, let me see. Type in Cerberus and then 9843-787. Try that.
Fuck, he must really know what he's doing. He typed in 16 characters with 4 keystrokes. After the cell block is opened, Riddick commandeers some of the drones and raises hell as a distraction for Dacker to get to work on the ship. I like this sequence because it really quickly shows you the manufacturing process of the drones. As you're sprinting through gunning down enemies, you'll pass by a rail system carrying them from one part of the conversion to another, perhaps following up the inspiration of Half-Life with a nod to Half-Life 2. We can also find a poor guy named Miles, who is halfway to becoming a drone. Should you wish to explore Riddick's capacity for empathy, you can make sure his last words are sent to his family and put him out of his misery.
Please, don't let them do this to me.
It's a far more effective version of a scene you come across in Butcher Bay, where there is some random guy during the riot in Single Max on the floor in the fetal position asking for you to kill him, and it's not entirely clear what his injuries are or anything. I don't even know if he's sick, but I'm a people pleaser. So, I'll give you the dignity and honor you deserve. After a series of action sequences that crescendo with Riddick once again getting in some kind of mech suit, Dacker contacts him and asks him to hurry. Jailer attacked Silverman and they got separated looking for Lynn. As we take a shortcut along the surface of the ship and fight off other mechs, Revis monologues through your comm system, and what started as effectively annoying posturing by her starts slipping up. There's one too many semi-sarcastic offers to just stand down, and maybe I can let you go. And maybe you can join us. I mean, clearly you've got a knack for this sort of thing. Me and the boys have been talking it over, and we think you could have the big office, the one facing Agera Prime. New title? Work with me.
Mutiny! Mutiny!
Jesus Christ! Am I doing that? Oh, that's someone else. I thought Riddick had just had it. That's kind of bad editing. We meet up with Silverman and Lynn from behind a ventilation grate, and as she's thanking you for saving her daughter, Jailer appears from behind with a shotgun and kills her, which is upsetting and sad, but also, I don't think Riddick was very proactive with ensuring her safety. Jailer did say he was going to kill her, so even a warning might have meant a world of difference. Funnily, he does wish to fight you unarmed, but I feel like these gentlemanly customs of war, need not apply to this guy. In an interesting subversion of a scene that would usually be the hero consoling a child who's just lost their mother, Riddick instead takes the opportunity to dole out his own brand of cope, which is to create another little sociopath just like him. He doesn't put her at ease that the monster that killed her mother is dead, no longer able to hurt anybody. No, he tells her, this fucking baby, the trauma from this moment will stay with you for the rest of your life. And if you're lucky, you can let it deaden your emotion and become as a knife in which to vanquish your foes. Because it's a fucked up world and a fucked up place. Everybody's judged by their fucked up face, fucked up dreams. Actually, if I continue this bit, there's no way they will let me monetize this. Dacker is waiting at the ship, but he needs a minute to unlock the door for Riddick. But in that minute, Revis kills him and attacks Riddick. In maybe the toughest fight in either game, the two face off and prove to be pretty evenly matched. She's even capable of doing the same counterattacks as you. Eventually, she slips up and Riddick runs the hairpin dagger he took from her through her throat. Unable to start up the ship without Dacker, he promptly steps into an escape pod and hits eject. With enough time to notice Lynn emerge from the shadows, asking him to take her with him, and Revis standing once again. Far less passive-aggressive with her words now that there is a knife in her word box. She fires a rocket from the Athena that sends Riddick's pod tumbling down to a nearby planet. Doesn't seem like there's max 2 hours left of this game, does it? An unknowable amount of time later, Riddick wakes up on the shores of New Venice, which is actively being sacked by the Athena's crew. Drones are executing civilians in the streets, driving them to hide out in sewer systems. If you really dream it so, I guess one could see this as another effect of Half-Life 2's influence, with a once thriving city caught in the grips of a totalitarian takeover from our new alien overlords. But sorely missing is the propping up of Riddick as a revolutionary leader or savior of sorts. I don't know why, but I could see it. I could see him as the enigmatic figurehead of some underground guerrilla-style resistance, wearing his leather shackles as a reminder that we have nothing to lose but our chains. As it stands though, pretty much everyone's already dead, so it's gonna be slow going getting a revolution started. Maybe we can start small, print a zine, and I don't know, leave it by the entrance to a record store. charge $5 for it. Hey, times are tough. I tend to categorize the two halves of this game in my head as the cool stuff on a merc ship, the titular assault on Dark Athena, if you will, and the other half I remember as Brown, a linear shooting gallery without even the facade of RPG elements, as well as an extension beyond the usual stopping point of a Riddick adventure, i.e. the point where all the characters that aren't Riddick are dead. Then, in a bizarre moment of lucidity, the story recognizes that the fight down here is a dead end, and that the only remaining plot thread is aboard the Athena. An artistic rendering of those times you enter the garage and think, why did I come in here? How did I get here? I don't even have a garage.
Who the fuck are you?
Hey. Entering through the Dark Athena's cargo bay, Riddick is confronted by Spinner, who is elated by the chance of facing off against such a famous badass, which he of course does from inside a mech suit, which this series has long since proven to be easily cheesed. In the distant future, they have yet to find a solution for a guy standing behind a box and shooting your ass every time you turn around.
Everybody bleeds the same.
I could have.
If it's any consolation.
On a comm station, we confirmed that Lynn is still alive and she's sabotaged the ship so it can't lift off again. This conversation is cut short by Revis with a squad of shivering goons, the remains of her mercs who are not confident about their odds. Just then, a group of drones seem to turn on them and open fire.
Eventually, all servants turn on their masters.
Hey, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's something going on here, right? Get this guy on some posters with his fist in the air. My man's working on his manifesto. He's just shot. The penultimate action sequence, I initially saw parallels to the BioShock franchise. Riddick pilots a hulking drone with an arm gun and sends Lynn into the vent system, ferrying her around on its shoulders. And while that does seem the more likely inspiration, it's not the first time Vin Diesel, as a robot, protected a child. The two make a break for a ship, but are ambushed by Revis one last time, now wearing a rubber rocket launcher suit. I don't know. What do you wear on the day you know you will die? The two fight until Revis is knocked down an elevator shaft of some sort. Before letting her fall, she shares some parting indifference to the situation. An indifference that might have been more meaningful if she were more than a stock bad guy. You know, the whole time I was thinking, why don't they pull something goofy or out of left field, like reveal that she was Riddick's ex-wife or something? They have this bitterness and this history that's unspoken, and then in this final scene right before she's about to fall, he grabs her and they embrace and just start hard making out. That same excitement that ignited their first toxic flame has been restarted, and rationality be damned. Everybody needs somebody, and these two are like two sides of the same coin. Creatures of darkness. But right in the middle of this passionate moment, Lynn drops down from a vent with a knife and, thinking she was attacking Riddick, goes right for the sweet spot. And Riddick has to reckon with the miniature version of himself he's created. A sin he will repeat not too long from now. Or you could go with their idea, which is she falls and then they leave. they fuck off.
Day 10 on Prison Planet. The God Lord Jesus smiles upon me. A transport ship. A way out. And what's this? A cigarette trader. God, he even looks like a cigarette. I have to play it cool if I'm gonna get a deal from him.
I have mixed feelings about the plot of Assault on Dark Athena. In some ways, the writing has matured and showed a willingness to explore notes of sentimentality and drama in the midst of its pulp. We see the closest thing to a crack in the indestructible concrete slab of Riddick's exterior, and I find that to be very admirable. It did not go unnoticed, but as that pathos grew, so too did the pulp. It caught up pretty fast, such that it very quickly loses its edge in a sea of obscenities and mean-spirited deaths. I don't know if it quite reached a level where I felt there were stakes and I wished for the safety of the poor doomed souls that had the misfortune of being in Riddick's orbit. I've seen the entire oeuvre de Riddick. I know how these stories work, so I would meet every death with a sort of defeated sigh. Oh, that sucks. You'll have to get a few more of those next run, huh? Characters, I mean. It wisely leans away from Lord of the Rings and into Warhammer 40k, deviating from established lore by giving us a merc ship that has abandoned protocol and turned to cruel acts of mad science in their pirate-like power trip across a developing galaxy. Nobody's expelling fantasy jargon in the Queen's English. There's no ethereal visions of Riddick's prophesized place as savior of the galaxy, king of the Necromongers. It's an extended detour that sets Riddick up to do and say more badass shit, which remains sharper than ever. Nothing quite matches. I'm not afraid of the dark is afraid of me, but we get pretty damn close. Even with its brief playtime and sparse exposition, it never feels like it was underwritten, as though things weren't explained or expanded on because there wasn't writing there. Everything involving the Dark Athena has a pretty confident sense of place and purpose, and judging by some of the unlockable bonus material, even characters that don't say much else besides muttering old man shit or saying fuck you Riddick, you suck, had detailed backgrounds written up.
Riddick! You motherfucking piece of turd.
Characters like Sad Eyes, who just kind of gets deleted from the story, was a member of the Blueskins, the gang that we came across many times in Butcher Bay, and killed most of them for something? I don't remember. I'm sure it was important at the time, but at the moment I cannot recall why I killed an entire organized group of neutral characters. Which is how it starts, you know, you start forgetting the little shit. Anyway, they go into her history with the Blueskins, and you don't even need to read it because the characterization kind of has that covered. Perhaps Starbreeze was a bit overconfident in the potential of Dark Athena, because before this additional content there was a clear path to the media it was acting as a prequel to. The events in between Escape from Butcher Bay and Pitch Black wouldn't be too hard to imagine. Riddick and Johns use Hoxie's ship to get back up to the Soul Track shipping lanes, stick out a thumb, flag down a bus full of supermodels on a national bikini tour, and they're looking for 2 oil boys. But now there's a gap in there and a wildly fluctuating scale. Did Riddick walk off camera to be greeted by Johns holding up a gun and twirling a pair of handcuffs? You know the drill, big guy. While Dark Athena controls nearly identically to the remake of Butcher Bay, as in all the buttons do all the things they did previously, in general it's a far less genre-fluid experience, nearly sliced into 2 different kind of games, an even more straightforwardly stealth game and a platform-heavy shooter. Sometimes they bleed into each other, but I more clearly sense the wishes of the developer. I feel their gaze bearing down on me as if to say, get on your knees, you worm. Sneak around this ship like the stinky little worm you are. In so many words. Early on, in Dark Athena, there's this classic stealth game setup, a cargo hold area, presenting a disorganized maze of crates, and of course several drones are patrolling, as well as 1 or 2 on a catwalk up above. And I was almost taken aback at how much of a line it was drawing for you. Like, this is a stealth room, so if you could kindly sneak, we'd appreciate it. Later on, there's a similar sequence where you're climbing up a massive tower of shipping containers while a guard in an oscillating lift with a big spotlight pivots up and down, potentially catching you. And you have to quickly attempt to make some progress up the stack before the light comes back, and this was a real treat. I was dreading the moment they just toss you a rifle and shove you into a corridor, and to their credit, they really don't do that for the majority of the game. There's a gun you can find, but it's like a one-off shotgun, and you can use the arm gun from dead drones, but you're stuck in that stationary place like a turret. As amusing as it would have been for Riddick to have to drag around a dead body with a gun stapled to it for the whole game, prop it up like a meat shield, put googly eyes on it, use it like a sock puppet, hide inside it for warmth. I got a ton of ideas. I could keep going for you. Shit. The drones even have a sort of diegetic light cone that indicates where their attention is or if they are alerted and searching for you. In Butcher Bay, the devs really struggled to find an elegant way of letting you know where enemies are looking so you can avoid their line of sight, and they settled on guard helmets that have a laser pointer built into them, which even they admit didn't have any in-world purpose or useful application, and it often didn't matter since most guards can see through metal with 20/20 vision and have their rifle raised and clip emptied before you can say, up, just to get the praise shit out of the way. There's a lot of inventive experimentation from Starbreeze in this sequel, down to tiny simple things. The whole time I was playing Butcher Bay, I was thinking, why don't they ever pit Riddick against like a really big guy, you know? Just a guy who's edge over Riddick is that he's a big guy with a bigger character model, and I appreciate that not only do they do this, but it wasn't even an enemy type that they threw in with other mercs or something. No, just that guy was a big guy, and it was somehow a tougher fight than like the final boss. It on and off feels like it's pushing this format forward, and there are plenty of fun ideas. Like one area has this massive gravity engine thing in its center, and since you're not weighted like the drones, you're slowly getting pulled into it. As you dispatch enemies, instead of falling down limp, they catapult into its center. It's there for as long as you are in that room, and then there's nothing like it ever again. For being noticeably shorter than its precursor, there seems to be no shortage of neat sci-fi set pieces. But I can't help but feel like these ideas run dry after you wake up in New Venice. And it just felt like all of this goodwill was slowly stripped away. Again, borrowing from Half-Life 2, they bestow upon you a sort of gimmick weapon that can also be used to solve puzzles and bypass obstacles. The Scar Gun, which shoots sticky grenades that explode by remote. Something that I think ordinarily I would be completely supportive of, but it seems almost invasive to the spirit of the franchise. It's really strange to think how quickly the game went from beating a to death with your bare hands on a pirate ship in space, where they gut hostages and turn them into cyborg puppets, to whimsical puzzle device on the beach. Stealth is dropped almost entirely as you instead run around in broad daylight, taking out spider robots and big hulking drones with this thing. I don't feel like Riddick doing any of these things. Do you remember how his whole thing is that he can see in the dark? Seems to me he's better suited elsewhere, like in a sewer system or a Hollister store. I'd like to say it completely rights the ship when you go back into the Athena, but not fully. There are two boss fights that are both a bit of a letdown, but especially Revis, because it's only really a fight for as long as you don't know how to kill her. And once you do, it can be over in a matter of seconds.
But it ends right here, right now.
It's like banking on your inability to notice that there's a giant elevator shaft behind her, and you waste a bunch of time trying to kill her with your novelty weapon that doesn't hurt her for reasons. Even though there are improvements, I think I fundamentally just don't appreciate the kind of game they wanted to make with Dark Athena. I don't know if it was some awkward attempt at catching up to where big budget action games had gone in the last 5 years. A huge part of why I enjoyed and remembered and connected with Escape from Butcher Bay was those RPG elements, which is a stretch to call it that, but for lack of better terminology, those hub areas, interacting with characters, the exploration and ability to choose stealth or action in many circumstances. I didn't want more linearity, better pacing, and firmly divided modes of play. I literally just wanted to collect bugs and eat them to get high. You didn't have to do all this. Assault on Dark Athena is much more unabashedly near-dystopian sci-fi and trades the familiar concrete and steel for gritty, greasy, and Geiger-esque hallways lined with wiring and tubing, jerry-rigged repairs done over uniform panels of riveted metal and caging. Paired with the ghoulish nature of the drones stomping around with exposed flesh beneath robotic BDSM armor, muttering commands, there is something of a biomechanical undercurrent, set design that pulls from the Alien franchise. Even the wardrobe of the Athena's crew feels pulled from the finest millennial schlock. The contrast between their gothic Dune getups and Riddick's Kirkland brand black tank top could not be more stark. Not only does Dark Athena retain much of Butcher Bay's visual charm, but from the first conversation with Bonner, it is abundantly clear that there has been a huge leap forward in quality of animations. Characters are far more expressive, moving their body and gesticulating, while speaking in a way that is clearly captured while someone is reciting each specific line, instead of cycling through a series of poses.
You don't know anything.
I guess not.
Knowing how fluid and natural this looks, they really go overboard with showing off this potential physicality in characters like X-Bob, who seems to exist for the sole purpose of allowing you to watch a 5-minute long, unlooped psychotic break.
Fuck off!
He just keeps going as long as you're staring at him. And as a performance, it's like one of the most impressive and funny things I've seen in a game. And it seems to be born almost out of the absurdity of the technology itself, that this is what they chose to do with it. My quibbles with the color palette aside, these are both very beautiful looking games that have only aged maybe a couple days. It was of an era that had just gained access to these new technologies like bloom and depth of field, little quirks to attempt to mimic film cameras, and people got straight to playing with them, like a child screaming in excitement after receiving a Nintendo 64. Wouldn't know though. I suppose you could interpret that as making the game look a bit like a relic, in the same way people regard games like Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, and actually Starbreeze's reboot of Syndicate. Both had some pretty over-the-top bloom. However, I think starting with Pitch Black, the Riddick franchise already established a look that was dictated by otherworldly lighting due to a sort of visual experiment. They took the film negative and marinated it in piss. Look, I'm gonna level with you. Ordinarily, I like to interject the regular proceedings with something of a spin-off show called The Rat Roundup, and when there is no material for the production of a full-length episode of The Rat Roundup, I have, on rare occasions, substituted it with a third spin-off series titled the Bat Roundup, though it pains me to admit it, sometimes neither series is relevant to a video game. I know! I don't make the rules! In the absence of bats or rats, I can only plead, dear viewer, especially those of you who are involved in video game development, please put rats or bats in your game. Every year, over 1 billion rats go without pizza, and like 100,000 bats go without whatever the fuck they eat. Depends on the bat, I guess. So many potential critters that could add character to a dark alley or a medieval dungeon are left without a home, without a food in their bowl. Putting just one rat in your video game could put food in 1,000 bowls for rats. And when their bowl is full, our bowls are full. The bowl in our hearts. The bowl in our soul. It only takes a bowl, and I know it's hard, but that bowl could be spread to several Hang on, what the fuck is that? What is that guy? What is this small man? I think this warrants opening up a third spin-off series to investigate these strange alien vermin. Whoa! Look at them go. They're running and wriggling around, chittering and skittering. What are these guys? They got 4 legs, a tail, and a sort of armored carapace. Are they combat ready? These unnamed, as of yet, spacefaring varmints populate the ductworks and crawl spaces of the Dark Athena, stowaways on a pirate ship, subsisting on burger crumbs, making nests out of issues of Merc Girl magazine. Though I may not know what you are or what planet you hail from, you express the small rodent-like packaging that is deserving of spotlighting. Not too bright though. Like Riddick, these guys stick to the dark, subsisting in the shadows, guiding weary travelers along escape routes, and presenting their human assholes. Overall, I think they are deserving of my highest small guy rating. Good. Voice work is once again phenomenal, and maybe, sorry to say, better now that I can't hear how often John DiMaggio and Michael Rooker repeat as different characters. Even without those two or Exhibit, Assault on Dark Athena, I would say, has less overall star power, but very, very intentional stunt casting. To me, 2 of the most glaring influences for the story are Alien and Half-Life 2. And so, with access to that pool of talent, why not cast Lance Henriksen as Dacker?
You know, I told him it was a risky journey, and I told him that, and shit.
Or Michelle Forbes, who voices Judith Mossman in Half-Life 2, as Revis. Her in particular stood out to me as just a great characterization of this person that has never caught a break in life, and then finally snapped, becoming one with their darker impulses, and expressing an aggressive indifference to suffering.
Riddick! Riddick! Oh, I'd love to stay and chat, but, well, you know... Kill him!
Gustav Grefberg returns to provide some new music, and there's a lot of consistency between the 2 soundtracks, revisiting much of the same instrumentation with a few noteworthy exceptions. It's a touch more industrial, with slamming metal and scraping sounds used as percussion. The track Drone Mile, that plays as Riddick takes control of the drone army to fight off a squad of mercs, takes the cinematic score and applies a layer of synths and digital drum pads that nearly evoke Jesper Kid's work on the Warhammer games. It really elevates elevates the payoff of that moment and is entirely listenable on its own. The great oddity of this game's soundtrack occurs as it cuts to credits, and we are treated to a Swedish prog metal track titled Awaiting the Turmoil, which I think I laughed out loud the moment its opening blast beat dropped.
When I say goodbye, it's forever.
It's a bit jarring for me, a person who has long dabbled in a wide spectrum of metal, if only because I never associated the series with metal, let alone this brand of it. The band is listed as Valley of the Dead, which isn't a real band. It's like a placeholder name for a musician named Gustav Jord, a longtime member of a thrashy death metal band called Defleshed, which is way more my shit than the track they went with. I don't mean to imply it shouldn't be goofy though. Were I to consider some piece of metal music to cap off this game, it would most assuredly be goofy, but more evocative of Riddick and his world, so maybe something like Fear Factory or Static X or maybe Prong? Oh my god, if it was just snap your finger, snap your neck, I would be livid with joy. The guy snapped a lot of necks. Let's face it, Riddick was always a one-trick pony who should have been retired at the end of Pitch Black. Continuing to trot out this character with his magic eye shine, read night vision goggles, is introducing nothing new. The gameplay here is shonky at best, and set in a wildly unconvincing universe with a premise as poor as the actor that plays him. Is this a stealth game or an action game? As it delivers neither? I would suggest confining this to the bargain bin, but with the death knell being sounded on the 360 console, it may be better as a mug coaster or something to entertain your budgergar? It's a type of bird. That's hyper specific. This guy has this bird. You know, initially I was going to suggest that you misunderstood what Riddick's power was. Like you thought that the power was in the goggles or something, but I don't think I ever really examined the utility of his power outside of any scenario where one was incarcerated in darkness. Like, the power is, I naturally have night vision goggle powers, but then when I'm in light, it may as well be dark for how little I can see, so I need goggles to see. It's kind of equivalent to what most people experience, just inverted. I can't see in the dark, so I need goggles. He can't see in the day, so he needs goggles. It's just something to consider. I don't know. Disappointment. I really thought this could be a good game. After I first start to play the game, I noticed right away, this game sucks. The graphic is very, very bad. I feel like I'm playing PS2 game. Even worse than most PS2 game, and distant blurry effect is terrible. It makes the player trying very hard to focus on something very unnecessary, with not very natural movement, and I have to be at the exact spot to make the move. I want to jump or do wherever and whenever I want. Oh, please jump here. Oh, please climb here. After I played Tomb Raider and Killzone 2, this game looks like joke. Low budget look, bad designers, bad modelers, totally did not use the full potential of PS3. An awful game from an awesome movie. I want to break things when I play this game. No joy whatsoever. I'm happier just watching the movie. You don't strike me as someone that achieves happiness all that often, given that you're driven to violence by what is generally agreed to be an at least alright game. I'm trying to think, are there any games that would drive me to say all this? Maybe I just haven't played them yet. I think the older I get and the more distance there is between me and early YouTube, the more I find myself locking away thoughts like this and stowing them on the top of the closet, if you will, in order to avoid assailing the innocent joy of others. I have irrational anger. I have that wolf, but it's chained up for your safety, so you better not ask me if I'm glad that the Silent Hill 2 remake was good. That's gonna be on a shirt with like a Grim Reaper pointing an Uzi at you while eating a handful of lithium. Oh, but for sure, guessing by the way you wield your opinion, you were probably still developing adolescent sentience when the PS2 was in its prime, and don't actually remember what a game on that console looked like, so much as you are using it as shorthand for old, as in the way I feel right now. Disappointed. This game is so disappointing. The only reason I brought this game is because I'm a big fan of Pitch Black and Chronicles of Riddick. The action is boring. There's hardly any moves. The graphics are dated. Looks like I'm playing playing a PS2, they could have made this game so much better. The best thing about this game is the eye shine. Bottom line, I would not recommend. What other moves do you want? You do all the moves that Riddick does in Pitch Black. What else is there? You didn't get to press X to shave his head with a sharpened piece of scrap metal and engine grease? You don't get to press Y to sense when someone is on their period? He fights, he sneaks, he climbs, he says cool things. I can't imagine expecting anything else from this guy. Maybe they gave up during the opening walkthrough scene where you don't have control of Riddick because he's in cuffs, and they were just like, what is this, the first walking sim? Am I watching a movie or playing a game? What were they thinking? Oh, and now I'm stuck staring at a toilet? Come on. Oh, I gotta plug the controller in. It still amazes me how solid Escape from Butcher Bay is, despite an almost textbook messy development cycle. A filled-in bingo card. It took the path of most resistance to the least rewards imaginable, and even had a second go that underperformed. It's weirdly analogous to its film franchise counterpart as well. A series that begs the question, why isn't this working? And there are plenty of valid answers to that, but no definitive one for me. I think at the top of the list might be that it assumed that it had a recognizable universe, when really every piece of Riddick media looks different and inhabits different genres. It is consistently inconsistent. The lore may wish to prop up this one character as the linchpin of a galaxy, but I don't know if he's capable of doing that at the box office. I like Riddick. He's the epitome of the self-insert character, of showing up to a D&D campaign and being completely disruptive, of doodling in a notebook what you think the baddest fucker in the galaxy looks like. There is an honesty to that creation, to rule of cool run amok, that I identify with as a product of the new millennia. That first game, without even selling well, was a strong enough proof of concept that media tie-in games could stand shoulder to shoulder with original titles. Maybe even more so if they weren't racing to meet a deadline in tandem with a dead-on-arrival film. It rezzed Starbreeze when the studio was down for the count on concept alone and led to The Darkness, which is the shimmering jewel atop their heavy crown. The follow-up game is a bit clumsy in comparison, sometimes stepping on beat and other times stubbing its toe. If it were the case that Starbreeze was given more time, money, and less interference or threat of closure, then I'd probably be more critical of it. I mean, it had the same field of rakes as Butcher Bay. It just nailed a couple more of them. I can't discount the possibility that the pitch is off-putting, that it may carry baggage that new players don't want to unpack. Who is this guy? Okay, and he's been in other things? Okay, and Vin Diesel plays him? Are there cars in this? No? How many movies do I have to watch for this to make sense? Alright. Are you sure there's no cars in this? When the reality was, you could live in blissful ignorance to all of that and still enjoy a competently constructed sci-fi romp that gives you a little of a lot of genres and centers around one of the better, more fun video game protagonists of the decade. That's what Riddick is. Even in movies, he's a video game protagonist. I like to take the piss out of gamers who would say things like, "This looks like a PS2 game," and mean that as an insult. Oh, it looks like a game from the historically most successful, iconic, and beloved console? Oh, heaven forfend! But I get that this sort of thing comes in waves. There will be a wave of gamers that regard this era of visuals as outdated or ugly, and it will be followed by a wave of gamers that long for that style to return. By the way, shout out to a little indie game called Wretched. Indescribably cozy if this was your era, while the package of Assault on Dark Athena is certainly a bargain, especially at the time of my writing. You can't beat that price. It's still anchored by Escape from Butcher Bay, and the fact that they did a ground-up remake of it seems woefully underappreciated. I think that game is the draw. That's the experience that is worthwhile. And Dark Athena can be better appreciated as an after-party, as the slightly warm, less carbonated final fifth of the can. The collective Riddick-verse is a harder sell than just playing a neat game. But honestly, the more I've sat with these films, games, shorts, videos, bonus material, the more and more I'm just kinda down for it all. Sure, they are perpetually in search of their own voice, but they aim for and often hit the target of fun, which is a trait that transcends quality. Do I think they're good? I don't know. I thought they were fun. Is fun good? Alright, that's literally all I can stand talking about Riddick. I'm done forever. And when I say forever, it's goodbye. There's such shit.
Sure.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sure I won't be able to stay away. You got a third game coming out anytime soon?
No. Need one.
You sure do, man.
Money.
What?
Give me some money.
Yeah, I'm not doing that, man. Can I offer you a monster?
Not interested.
You sure?
Not interested.
Seemed like you were a couple hours ago.
Don't want it.
Oh, all right. I never know what you want, and I just want to make you happy.
Give me some.
Some what?
Give me the special.
Special?
Yeah.
What are we talking about here?
Drop 'em. I'm ready for the duel. Give me the tool.
I think I see what's going on here, and look, I'm flattered, but spoken for.
I got a package.
All the same, have a good night.
Sorry.
No need to apologize. Have a good night.
So much for that idea.
Farewell.
I got desperate.
Uninstalling software.
You know, you're always looking out for me.
I needed the RAM anyway.
Well, what else can I say, but that's the end of the video, and thank you for watching it. If you enjoyed that video, you're in luck. There's a few others that are similar to it, most of which available for free, but 5 of which available by joining my Patreon for as little as $1 American. The most recent paywalled video being a retrospective of David Lynch's film career. Not so much in a historical sense, going down a Wikipedia sense, but in my experience with his films. So that's there if you want that. I get the impression that paying for somebody's YouTube content is a threshold that's difficult to cross. Then it's like, you know, what next? I'm going to start paying for parking? Parking's free. They just, you know, leave a bunch of trash on your windshield. Nope, someone's at the door. Anyway, yeah, thanks for watching the video. I was about to get stuck in a loop and do the same thing over again. So, subscribe if you'd like to do that. Like, commenting. I said that. I did the Patreon thing. Join my Discord. Follow me on Blue Sky. What else do I do? Look in the description. There's, I could do that too, but you know, it's so easy. You could just do it. All right, that's all. Thank you again for sticking around and watching this video, and an extra special thanks to 2Password for Kids, Ailing Uncle, A Large Biotic Gerbil, Aaron Kwolek, Assisi. Again, Dean says, Shy Magicians, Sign Musicians. Shy Magicians, Sign Musicians, Shy Magicians, Sign Musicians, ran out of space. Alexander Smith, Andre Perkins, Aparts 89, Audio Video, Bayard Brown, Ben Oliver, Bionicle Enjoyer, Caroline Greer, Close Quarter Wombat, Cookie Popper, Cormick, Kronicki, D-Sky, Daniel Streb, Dante de Glanville, Daphne Pittendry, Dark Raptor 86, Dead Tired Dad, Delilah Lindonk, The Illuminati, Capitan, The Real Michael King, Dirk Kahl, Dirt Person, Dr. Beard, Dongs.exe, Dwellin' with Darhraku, Edgy, Frodo Ballbag,
Garbage Day,
Garrett Clark, Grime Bear, Grok, Hex of Hearts, High Food Court, Ludex Alexander, James Nicholson, Jared Bynum, Jason Corbin, Jay Alameen, Jabo, Jeremy Horsley, John Dreffs, Jojo Cat, John Boring, Joseph Zanoni, Justin Harper, Carrot, Catherine Amelia, King Rathew, Labor Delendast, Mac Bellegard, Michael Schmidt, Mord Detrius, Muglurk, Naki Naki Who's There, Nick Bellinger, Noise Tank 01, Not a Name, Ona Hill, Pazuzu, Poseidon 13, Puke Skywalker, formerly 410,757,864,530 gay cops. Race You to Space, Roland, Psycho Gekido, Salvatore Tosti, Samuel Vanderplatz, Slorak, Snapplefish, Some Kind of Phonetic Spelling. I feel like that was in response to something I said last time that I don't remember. Rest assured, I'll put it together later and have a hearty chuckle. Stuart McIntyre, Takeout, That Iru Guy Loves You, This Deal is Getting Better All the Time, Two Stand, Witless Moth, Worm, Zach Bishop. After much consideration and some credit card fraud, I've realized Piss Missile is a bit crass. Cum Cannon's where it's at, yo. Darkside Blues, El Jaguar, Etto, Avaner, Giraffa. I've given up trying to think of a funny name involving goblins. J, Jeremy Silver, J Hamilton X, June Choi, Jaya Temkoa, Feaster of Avery's Face, Catherine Graven, Lore, Mr. Alpacleton, Savvy Fave, Smokey Jefferson, Stumpovich, Swood Operator, T-Dog 8083, Zach Bagans, former lead investigator for the IRS, A Hanging Chad, Albert Hundley, Alex Walton, Aronai Saez, Binary Vision, Brady the Sanity Tax Collector, Cantankerous, Chimichanga Jones, Kodamite, Daddy Resnor, Daniel Moen Larson, Dano the Mano, David Offord, DeForcy, Fiona Summers, Gareth Farrow, Grounded Valkyrie. Have a wonderful day. Here's to rats! Herman, James Andrew Perla Adams, James Snipes, J-Man DX, Jonathan Pence, Christina Downs, Lugubrious Moron, Mad Monty 98, Make It Raynor, Mango, Name Requires DLC, Neb, Ophelia Fishwife, P. Dizzle, Persian Air, Pickblick, Prozacs, Resident Aikman, Robert Brandon, Rowdy Roddy Peeper, Samijima, Sorry I'm No Hero, Subdermal Cassette Loader, Sugarboo, Technica, 10-Beat, The Angry Pebble, The Condroid, Tebow, Tuski, 12 trans rats in a trench coat. Those rats got it hard out there lately. Stay strong. 77 Elvis the King, A Big Gay Rat. You too. A small red dog. A squatting necromancer hanging at the local crypt. ASD 666. A shireling. Alistair Stewart. Alexander Olbrich. Alistair Grout. All beer, no breaks. All cops are bingle bongles. Andrew Light. Andrew Lebrano. Andy P. Anthony. Applesauce Boss. Arthouse Phantom. Astro Shepherd. Osella. Shut up! Osella. Auspicious Whiskers. Bolton. Bames Jolie. Bogler, BP King, Ben and Cara Dowling, Benjamin Payne, Best Tiger, BBF and Bloxburg, Bishy 93, Biddles 999999999999999999999999999999999999999999999999999999999999999 Bivdub, Black Robed Mage, Blake, Blue Pepsi and Gasoline, Bob Dole, Bogdan Atanasoya, Bohemian Nobody, Bostradamus, Brandon Frost, Brandon Winkleman, Breeze McMothman, Brett Anadoluski, Burps Wimbledon, Butter My Biscuits and Tickle My Pickle, Caleb Zane Kelly, Cameron Spoon, Case, Cerberus Arms, Cerebral Policy, Chernobyl Kinsman, Chicago's Famous Rat Hole, Chris Miner, Crisps 989, Christopher Lawrence, Classed, Clayton Joe Freund, Clean Walking Rat, Colby, Cole Bramlett, Cole Beep, uh-oh, you can have emojis in your name, Rat, Concristador, Count Zero Interrupt, Captain Canty, Captain Jax, Crispy J, Cyborg Number Blue, Damian H, Damn Good Coffee, and Hot, Dan M, Danny Kilpatrick, Dabney, Dark Zaramar, Darth Kunch, David Fromke, David Harpstrite, Dazed Clockwork, Dead Bleed, Deadpan Drew, Dean, Danny J.A., Destriga, Devin McCullough, Devana Barak, Dino Klimis, Disco Pickle, Dr. Futurity, Dog Vomit Slime Mold, Dom, yes that Dom, wait, no, not that one, the other Dom, Dunny Zero, Dylan Berry, Dismitri Yu, Eben Hollub, Eben Sullivan, Eels, Eric Andrews, Eric Clapton, Ethan Blue, Eudiptes, Every Day, Once a Day, Give Yourself a Putty, Fangrow, Fart Mother, Fat Boy Tubbs, Ferrican, 15 gargantuan low poly rats listening to Jungle, Filth Pig, again great album, Fix My Brain, Fox the Fuchs, Fragile Traveler, Frank Orifice, Fried Potato, Frolics with Bunnies, Fuzzy Tingle Times, Gamblor, Game is Good, General Klazara, Gloomerous, Gloria Gordon, Goaty Galaxy, Gooble Gobble, Gurneel, Haley Bobella, Haywood Jablomi, Heck It's Noah, Hentai McToon Boob, Hibernia Scholar, Hi-Res Titan, Hime Rowan, Hitoshi-san. Hold on, aren't those my shoes? Horror Show 93, HRLK, Hrothdell, Hug, Hunterlit, Hyborian Age Space Marine, Hyde King, I Fart on My Hands, Ideas Theat, Ilya Idamkin, INTJ loves her INTP, Irish Wristwatch, Irradiated Otter, Jabari Weathers, Jacob O'Callahan, Jacob Simon, Jake Raynor, J. Marco, Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg from The Fifth Element, played by Gary Oldman. One could say alongside Bruce Willis, but the two characters never meet. Jeff Ladd, Jeremy Langell, Jim Flandango, Jocelyn Dover. Wait, that's not right. Ben Cox. No, that's not. Fuck. I'm bad at jokes. Joey Jojo Jr. Shabadoo. Joshua, just give me a name. Okay. Pubert. Justin Darnell. Katakin. Captain Ketchup. Karagera. Karen Rosenow. Carpad. Cat. Posting favorite supernatural quotes. Well, sweetheart, I don't do shorts. Okay, well, Look, not to be that guy, but I'm pretty sure the line is, "Oh, sweetheart, I don't do shorts." So I don't know if you're gonna come at the king for that. Kayla Bivens, keep up the good work. Kieran Walker, Kelly O'Neill, Kevin Hanley, Key Lime Pie, Kezia Bledsoe, Kid Charlemagne, the FCC Can't Catch Me, Kind Raccoon, Kingyo Ningyo, Clarstrup, Chris Odie, Cresteasy, Kyle Ragsdale, Q, League of Struggle, Lee, Leland Miliokus, Leopold Gloom, Legendary Dragon, Luke Reynolds, Lydecker, M, Magic Meows, Mainly May, Mamoudou Ikaro, Mandalore Gaming. You beat me to it, motherfucker. Mango Roxas, Mark, Marquois, Martin, your wife is an angel who loves you. Mason Trapp, Matthew St. J, Matthew Callahan, Matthew Work, Maxine Zeds, Micah J. Best, Michael Anderson, Michael Parks, Michael Yates, Miles Phillips, Monster Train, More Sharks, Mortis on Fire, Mother Destruction, Mr. Ducky Quack, Mr. Mighty McMonkey, Mystical Lint, No Stars, Necot the Brave, Nex42, Nick Hooper, Nick Timmons, no, just skip this one. Noel C137, November Ocean, Noel Rom, Opichi Kostra, Origami Zergling, Pathetically Hopeful, Paul Fierce, Farceface, Philip Coffee, Picture, Princess Tiny Feet's Corn Niblets, Prophet, Radia, Red Chowder, Replicant, Ray Fox, Richter Strauss, Ridley, Ruibi Somem, Rusty Spork, Ruth Strange, Sathington, Scofflaw C the Bear, Shadanon, Shade, Shadowman 13, Sean the Prawn, Shrimpy Nobashi, Sybil Arnett, Silatixo, Simon Daniel, Slatanic, Slugs and Cats, Snitzboy, Solar, Someone Should Do It, but I won't say what. Spooky Schaefer, Spoopy Ghost, Startide, Stay Soft, Suzuya Rose, Taro Lati, Team R, T Stony, Teeny Dragator, The Clay Pigeon, The Lovely Dr. Dick Punch, The Pigeon Hiding in Your Walls, The Rat Roundup Saved My Life, The Sea Peoples, The Hairiest Hair, The Ninja Warrior, The Supervisor, Thick Vor Mom, Tim DeLong, TJ Self, Toaster Child, Tom, Tori, Trenton Wilkins, Trevelyan, Troy Webb, Trucks Band, Tutit, Meanage, Neetle, Teetle, Onsedu, Sempa Mission, Apprenance, EU, Unknown Function, V. Val, I wanna try one of those McPooled porks. Please, steal a McPooled pork from your job and mail it to me. Thank you. Vince Van Diesel, Vincent Cronin, Wahey Shet, Where Am I? Help, Wintermute, Wolf Chalice Logician, Ya Boy Weeaboo Jones, Ya Boy Mike, Zanga PF, Zen, Zongingu, Zombo Robo, Zoop De Whoop, Zuli, the Little Blue Kobold, and Put a Little Dirt Under My Pillow for the Dirt Man for being a patron. And a subsequent thanks to the rest. Thank you so much for all of your support and for allowing me to gestate on this project for so long. I promise to get to something else real soon and never talk about Riddick ever again in my goddamn life. Until Riddick 4, baby! Yeah, if you listen this far, I guess I'll already tell you. I'll put it in video so I can't back out of it. But I think I'm going to do a video on a game from a few months ago, less than a year, called Slitterhead. So if you were hoping to play that and didn't want to, watch one of these about it, you got a month-ish, probably less, to play it if you had planned to. Or, I'm not going to say anything. We're just two people talking. What else? What's going on? What's on the docket? Once I've made adequate headway on that, I'll probably do another poll on the Discord, so keep an eye out for that. I would like to say, because I've been thinking about it, so early on in this video, I, as a bit, show a clip from the film Ernest Goes to Jail. And I think that's important to this video, because it shows just how nebulous and incoherent my thought process can sometimes be. Because when I started writing this video, I was thinking of, peripheral media to shove into it. And one of the first things that came to me was, I need to go get a VHS copy of Ernest Goes to Jail. And I did that without thinking at all of what purpose, what function that would serve within the video, how I would utilize that. And you could see for yourself, it's very unjustified being there. It was as part of a setup that could have been literally anything. And that's because when I got it, I was like, why the fuck did I get this again? Why do I now own this? So anyway, thank you for supporting that. Okay, see you later. Have a good day.
To has made, there is still no 100% foolproof explanation for where this metal comes from. It's not on the table of elements or even an appendix of the table. This is, as far as I know, a new kind of rock.
Well, I'll be. A new kind of rock, you say? Give us it here.
Sure, it's your discovery after all. What are you doing?
I'm gonna make a rail out of it.
Lyle, I don't think that's a good idea. Plus, that thing is priceless.
You're just jealous you can't come on this trip. Wheels up, baby! Whoa!